Chapter 805, Endless-Class Super Aircraft Carrier, Part 2. The Endless-Class Super Aircraft Carrier, as its name suggests, is primarily an aircraft carrier, not a warship designed for anti-ship combat. Its role is quite similar to the Galaxy Empire's Tracker-class aircraft carrier. Both are called aircraft carriers, but they carry a large number of Army units and can perform combined operations in various environments. Tuck elaborated on the carrying capacity of the Endless class. The most important feature of the Endless class super aircraft carrier is its ability to transport a massive army. It can carry 8,900 Marines, equipped with 560 Warthog off-road vehicles, 80 Scorpion tanks, and 10 Mastodon armored personnel carriers. Additionally, it includes 100 all-terrain vehicles and 40 Wolverine anti-aircraft vehicles. This Marine Corps is organized at the division level. If deployed directly, the capital of an ordinary planet would struggle to resist such an attack. In addition, the warship can carry 8 Tyran Heavy Industry Hercules transport ships, 150 Phantom fighters, 150 Pelican transport aircraft, and 60 Viking fighters. It also has 124 multi-person drop bays and 329 single-seat drop bays for orbital airborne combat. If the ship participates in a war as a fleet flagship, the Pelican transport aircraft can be replaced with Phantom fighters, allowing for the deployment of 300 Phantom fighters to achieve absolute air superiority. Finally, the Infinity class is equipped with cabins for 500 Vulture robot fighters or Acolyte-1 attack drones, which can assist in fighter combat. As Tuck introduced these features, his excitement was palpable. The sheer numbers alone represented an almost unstoppable force. Lastly, the battleship includes a spaceport with 10 berths, capable of docking 10 warships up to 600 meters in length, Tuck added. Hearing this, even Tang Xiao was slightly moved. He turned around and asked, 600 meters long? According to our classification system, isn't this already cruiser level? He knew that the Endless-class super aircraft carrier could carry frigates, but he had not examined the data closely before. He was surprised to find that the UNSC's ship classification differed significantly from that of the Principality of Dawn. In the UNSC, battleships up to 600 meters were considered frigates. Of course, there are certain restrictions. For example, the battleship must be elongated, Tuck explained. Initially, we planned to adjust the structure of the spaceport, but Dr. Halsey suggested matching the design content to the original structure. Therefore, we have started the research and development of the supporting Steadfast-class frigates and Double-Blade-class frigates. According to our current classification, the 575-meter-long Steadfast class should be a heavy cruiser, and the 372-meter-long Twin Blades should be light cruisers. P.S. Strictly speaking, classifying battleships by length alone has its drawbacks. Length alone is not sufficient to define the level of a battleship. However, for the sake of convenience and understanding, I use length as a primary metric. Please be aware of some inconsistencies in this regard. So what happens before the Steadfast and Double Blades are developed? Are these spaceports empty? Tang Xiao asked. Tuck quickly responded, No. We have alternatives. In this spaceport, we plan to dock 20 Guard-class air defense destroyers and 10 Purification-class electronic warfare frigates. Although their shapes are somewhat mismatched, these ships will still serve their purpose effectively. Tang Xiao nodded. Considering the issue of long-term operations in deep space, we have equipped the Infinity class with a well-appointed barracks area, training grounds, living quarters, and even a cinema. We've also opened 2 bars, one for officers and a larger one for soldiers and technicians. Additionally, there's a dome structure on top of the battleship that houses an ecological square with a radius of about 150 meters. This space allows soldiers, who have been deployed for extended periods, to relax and unwind. Tuck added, the entire battleship accommodates 800 to 900 Marines, totaling 17,000 crew members, and boasts a high degree of automation. Tang Xiao smiled, recalling the Dreadnought-class heavy cruiser from the Galactic Republic era. Before modernization, that 600-meter-long cruiser required a crew of 12,000. In comparison, the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier is far more advanced in terms of intelligence and automation. In terms of defense, Malturk continued, the main armor belt of the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier is 4.9 meters thick, made of tri-titanium alloy. However, this armor does not cover the entire ship. There are vulnerabilities in the hangar platform, weapon systems, and spaceport. The dome structure is also a weak point. But Dr. Halsey, the ecological plaza is crucial, even though I have my reservations. Tang Xiao responded calmly. The primary role of the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier is not solely for fleet operations. If that were my only concern, I wouldn't have chosen the Infinity-class. You should understand this. Yes, Malturk quickly agreed. In short, the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier is incredibly powerful and versatile. However, the extensive internal space requirements make the interior quite cramped. For instance, the number of explosion-proof compartments is minimal. Under these circumstances, it's best for the Infinity class to operate with a deflector shield. Once the shield is breached, the battleship becomes highly vulnerable. Tang Xiao understood that this was essentially a shield-dependent ship. When compared to shield armor composite battleships like the Empire-class Star Destroyer and Victory-class Star Destroyer, or armor-reliant ships like the Hell's Angel-class battlecruiser, the differences in space utilization become apparent. The Infinity-class super aircraft carrier, much like the Jaeger-class battlecruiser, has a thin-skinned but spacious design. Despite its thick armor, it features a single-layer structure, making it susceptible to severe damage once the shield is penetrated due to the lack of explosion-proof compartments. Conversely, battleships like the Hells Angels, Empires, and Victories may seem less impressive in terms of internal space and features. However, in actual combat, the more robust and less pretentious designs often prevail. This is the fundamental difference. Chapter 1806, The Gathering of Giant Ships. Of course, it would be incorrect to say that the Jaeger-class and Endless-class battleships lack power. In fact, they are extremely formidable, but they are not specialized in artillery combat and protection. Take the Jaeger-class battlecruiser, for example. Although during the late Clone Wars, this type of battleship was outmatched by the ships of the Principality of Dawn on the battlefield, it was always considered obsolete, whether in the Principality of Dawn or in the Galactic Republic's army. However, this perception is not entirely accurate. Similarly, the Endless-class super aircraft carrier was never intended to serve as a capital ship. In other words, all the weapons on the Endless-class super aircraft carrier are not designed for the purpose of annihilation. Even though it is equipped with 3 particle light spears, the tactical maneuvers of the Endless-class super aircraft carrier on the battlefield will never be actively changed to destroy enemy warships. The Endless-class super aircraft carrier functions as a mobile military fortress and serves as the flagship within the fleet, remaining at the core and not easily engaging in direct combat. Tang Xiao's primary motivation for building the Endless-class super aircraft carrier was not to enhance the fleet's combat capabilities, but to explore the mysterious, unknown star field. The unknown star field is a vast region that occupies 1/3 of the Milky Way. Due to the confusing hyperspace channels in this star field, spacecraft that rely heavily on hyperspace channels are almost unable to navigate it. However, this star field is believed to contain countless secrets and treasures. The Killik swarm, which once dominated the Milky Way, retreated to the unknown star territory after its decline. Similarly, the Rakata people of the Infinite Empire left numerous ruins in the unknown star territory. Unlocking even a small portion of these secrets could lead to significant advancements. As previously mentioned, the development of science and technology follows a tree structure. As technology advances, more branches are included. In this era, it is no longer possible to develop science and technology comprehensively. Different civilizations may have completely different directions for technological development. Therefore, acquiring the technology of other civilizations is akin to adding a large branch to the technological tree, resulting in substantial improvements. Many scientists also believe that there must be a reason why the hyperspace channels in the unknown star field are so fragmented. It is unlikely for hyperspace to operate in such completely different ways within the same galaxy without a cause. Some scientists theorize that this may be due to the presence of a relatively unstable form of dark matter energy in the unknown star field. If this energy can be studied and harnessed, it could potentially lead to an energy revolution. This is why the Galactic Republic has shown great interest in the unknown star territory. When the Grand Republic Army was established and the Galactic Republic divided into 20 armies, the 7th Army was dedicated to exploring the unknown star territory. Additionally, when Palpatine was elected Speaker, the Galactic Republic organized a large-scale exploration of the unknown star field, led by Jedi Master Joruus C'baoth. C'baoth developed a Force skill that allowed warships to navigate the chaotic hyperspace using the guidance of the Force. Following this, Obi-Wan Kenobi discovered the location of the Kamino planet in the void, and Master Yoda opened the channel from the inner ring of the Milky Way to the model sector. Tang Xiao led the 4th Army of the Republic to attack the planet Semels. They all utilized a specific Force skill. Tang Xiao's interest in the unknown star field stemmed from two main reasons. He knew it contained countless valuable resources, and he was intrigued by dark matter energy. Although the Mothership database provided numerous methods to harness super energy, such as element zero, vacuum zero-point energy, Tiberium ore, and silica ore, the challenge lay in locating these energy sources for extraction. In the Milky Way, where they currently resided, dark matter existed in a stable state. Harnessing this energy would require extensive research, potentially spanning over 100 years. While 100 years might be insufficient to fully develop dark matter technology, the 4th civilization did not have that luxury of time, especially while confronting the Galactic Empire, the overlord of the entire galaxy. Tang Xiao speculated that the chaos in hyperspace within the unknown star field might be due to unstable dark matter energy. If true, this could present an opportunity to harness dark matter energy more efficiently and at a lower cost. Consequently, Tang Xiao ordered the development of the Endless-class super aircraft carrier designed for exploring unknown star fields. The Endless class, with its vast supplies and comprehensive facilities, was ideal for long-term exploration missions. Simultaneously, the Principality of Dawn lacked influence over Mandalore and the surrounding Neutral Galaxy Alliance starfield, a critical region. To address this, Tang Xiao dispatched Severance Tan, the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier capable of independent long-term operations, would serve as a strategic core anchored near the planet Mandalore. Severance Tan would collaborate with the Mandalorians using the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier number 1, the Infinity, as a base to intervene in Mandalore and its surrounding areas. The unique capabilities of the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier led to a fierce conflict between Newt Gunray and Dr. Halsey. Tang Xiao discovered Newt Gunray's plan to transform the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier into a mobile super-commercial center. This center could traverse the galaxy, functioning as a cargo distribution hub, and with its powerful weapons, even collect loan sharks. Tang Xiao's good mood, thanks to the completion of the Endless class, was the only reason Newt Gunray remained unharmed. Maltuck continued to introduce various data and characteristics of the Endless-class super aircraft carrier, a task that could take days. Tang Xiao interrupted, asking, "How did you finally complete the Endless-class energy system?" Newt Gunray, his facial muscles twitching with discomfort, replied, "We followed Dr. Halsey's plan and installed the reactor and hyperspace jump engine using Forerunner technology. However, this set of engines has doubled the cost of the battleship." "That's right," Tang Xiao responded calmly. "But doubling the cost just to allow the warship to enter the hyperspace channel within the gravitational circle, it's not worth it at all," Newt Gunray protested. Tang Xiao looked at him, a cold smile on his face. "You have no idea of the immense significance of this simple function. If you had told me that you did not install that set of engines, don't doubt that I would have thrown you into the battleship reactor." Newt Gunray trembled, recalling Tang Xiao's terrifying demeanor. He broke out in a cold sweat, shivering for a long time. Tang Xiao was at a loss for words. Suddenly, a cold voice spoke from behind him. "Do you know why Dr. Halsey calls this engine a hyperspace jump instead of just a jump? The difference in one word signifies a technological leap. It means our hyperspace navigation technology can begin to break through the limitations of mass projection. The speaker was Adele Ulan. Her face was stern, and her noble demeanor was fully on display. As the most powerful woman in the Dawn Principality, she had continued to learn and grow after marrying Tang Xiao. Her temperament had undergone a dramatic transformation. No longer the pampered youngest daughter of the Ulan family, she was now the Grand Duchess who helped Grand Duke Liming rule the country. As the CEO of Lundley Interstellar Power Company, she had extensive knowledge in this area. She gave Newt Gunray a cold look and said, "When this technology reaches its peak, we won't need hyperspace channels and can navigate freely in hyperspace. Imagine how terrifying that is. And you actually want to refuse? If that's not a crime against civilization, what is?" Newt Gunray nodded and bowed, not daring to show any disobedience. The Neimoidian's already somewhat hunched body curled up even more. This technology also means that the Endless-class super aircraft carrier will be able to navigate more freely in unknown star fields, Tang Xiao added, patting the back of Adele Ulan's hand to show his recognition and encouragement. He was naturally very pleased with how much his first wife had grown. Although he planned to marry Leia Skywalker as well, it didn't mean he only wanted one wife. Using the rail transit inside the battleship, Tang Xiao and his entourage arrived at the bridge of the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier. Scientists and staff were already busy there. Among them were the giant gastropod race Semirez, the stooped and cunning Neimoidians, and the resolute Solarians. Of course, the majority were humans. These people were making final preparations to ensure the battleship was ready to start at any moment. Suddenly, an alarm sounded. Dazzling white light flashed outside the planet Semmels, and a warship with a ferocious shape and a sharp bow like a bird's beak emerged from hyperspace. It was the second ship of the Conqueror-class battleship, the sister ship of the Fang, the battleship Destruction. The arrival of this battleship also signified the presence of Admiral Severance Tan, the top separatist general loaned out by Tang Xiao. As the supreme commander of the Mandalorian sector fleet, she had come in person to accept her new flagship. The battleship Destruction sailed next to the super aircraft carrier Infinity, and Severance Tan took a shuttle to the Bridge of Infinity to meet Tang Xiao. She knelt on one knee and bowed her head to him. Seeing the usually arrogant and famous general showing such respect to Tang Xiao, Newt Gunray, Thunbark Tula, and others were filled with awe. More battleships began to arrive on the bustling planet Semmels, carrying bigwigs from various factions invited to the maiden voyage ceremony. Parcel Argent, chairman of the Business Alliance, heads of retail industry groups, and even Walter Tambor, the somewhat wavering foreman of the Technology Alliance, were among them. However, Tang Xiao had already taken Adele Ulan to the captain's office. He had no intention of meeting these people. He was just there to oversee the preparations. To join in the excitement, an unprecedented wave of hyperspace fluctuations suddenly emerged. The hyperspace detector on the bridge of the Infinity continuously sounded the alarm. A dazzling white light flashed violently, and then an entire fleet appeared outside the planet Semmels. This fleet included 10 Behemoth-class battlecruisers and 2 Shenyi-class destroyers. At the center of the fleet were 2 other super battleships. One of them was the 14,100-meter-long second Ragnarov-class Titan battleship, the Darkness Titan. This battleship was now the flagship of Count Dooku, indicating that Count Dooku, the supreme leader of the Confederation of Independent Systems, had arrived in person. However, the other battleship puzzled everyone present. It was almost identical to the second ship of the Conqueror-class battleship, Destruction, which Severance Tan commanded. The reason it was described as almost the same was due to the different equipment installed on this battleship. According to the friend or foe identification information, this battleship was the third ship of the Conqueror class, named Slaughter. Scans revealed that the battleship Slaughter was 4,980 meters long, slightly longer than the 4,045-meter-long Fang and Destruction. The most significant difference was the replacement of the originally dish-shaped high-energy directional electromagnetic pulse cannons on both sides of the battleship. Instead, 2 hemispherical devices protruded outward, emitting a strange green energy flash. These were clearly a completely new set of secret weapons. Count Dooku had brought this new Conqueror-class battleship to showcase his military power, not only to the Galactic Empire, but also to the Trade Federation and the Principality of Dawn. After the arrival of the two giant ships, they sailed next to the Infinity. Now, around the planet Semmels, there were already 3 Infinity-class super aircraft carriers, 2 Conqueror-class battleships, and 1 Ragnarov-class Titan battleship, including the other 2 Infinity-class ships still under construction. This gathering of giant ships was truly unprecedented. Thank you to the great and glorious human civilization. Long live for the 300 starting coins. Chapter 1807, First Flight Ceremony. The scene was nothing short of awe-inspiring. 3 Infinity-class super aircraft carriers, 2 Conqueror-class battleships, and 1 Ragnarov-class Titan battleship assembled on the planet Semmels. The significance of such a formidable fleet gathering in one place was clear to all. Semmels was currently under the watchful eyes of spies from countless galactic empires and other factions, each one scrutinizing every move. In this tense atmosphere, Count Dooku made a bold statement by bringing the modified Conqueror-class battleship No. 3, the Carnage, to Semmels. This was a clear demonstration of power, a message to the Galactic Empire that compressing the Confederation of Independent Systems, CIS, to the eastern border of the galaxy did not equate to victory. The CIS still possessed the strength to keep the Galactic Empire entangled in the military fortress of Salukami. Indeed, the CIS had the capability to back up this show of force. Despite the rise of the Dawn Principality, the CIS remained the second most powerful force in the galaxy. After Tang Xiao and Palpatine reached a private accord, the CIS had been single-handedly resisting the Galactic Empire's offensive. The Battle of Salukami, which began with the establishment of the Galactic Empire, had raged for 6 months, 210 days in total. Including the period of the Galactic Republic, this battle had been ongoing for over a year. The CIS had managed to hold off more than half of the Galactic Empire's fleet in the Salukami system, maintaining an unyielding defense. This was a feat the Principality of Dawn could scarcely imagine. The Principality had always relied on swift, surprise victories against the Galactic Republic, knowing that prolonged conflict would lead to total collapse. The CIS, however, had no such concerns. They were prepared for a prolonged, head-on confrontation with the Galactic Empire. Why was this possible? As Tang Xiao had once explained to Count Dooku, the true strength of the CIS lay not in its vast territory or its fleets, but in the spark it had ignited. Even planets reoccupied by the Galactic Empire found ways to secretly support the CIS. The core area of the CIS was backed by Hutt space, ensuring a steady stream of support and supplies that the Galactic Empire could not easily disrupt. The CIS had become the beacon of freedom and democracy in the galaxy. Liberals opposed to both the Galactic Empire and the Principality of Dawn placed their hopes and beliefs in the CIS. This ideological support was what had enabled the CIS to resist for so long. After Count Dooku dismantled and eliminated the commercial guilds as a warning, the CIS underwent significant reforms. The Trade Federation, Enterprise Alliance, Interstellar Banking Association, Technology Alliance, Fourth Group, and Retail Federation, the largest corporate giants, began to shift from purely exploitative practices to more sustainable development. These corporations understood that there was no going back. With the collapse of the Galactic Republic, they knew they would receive no mercy from the Galactic Empire. The CIS was their last refuge. On the surface, it appeared that the CIS was confined to the eastern sector of the Milky Way. However, the support they continued to receive told a different story. The number of forces they directly control is far greater than what is apparent. At this moment, Count Dooku arrived on the bridge of the Infinity. Everyone present stepped aside, creating a clear path for him, and then bowed in respect. Severance Tan also moved aside, maintaining a meticulous stance, though she did not bow, showing her respect for the head of the Confederation of Independent Systems. Count Dooku, tall and majestic, strode in wearing a black military uniform, a velvet cape with a red top and black bottom, and 2 curved lightsabers hanging from his waist. His hair, now gray, was neatly combed back, and his beard was perfectly trimmed. He exuded a lion-like majesty. Tang Xiao often felt that, based on appearance alone, Count Dooku seemed more of a leader than himself. This commanding presence was something neither Tang Xiao nor Palpatine could match, though they each had their own intimidating aura. As Count Dooku entered, he glanced sideways at the captain's office, a subtle smile playing on his lips. He then raised his voice, declaring, "The war will continue. We will not be defeated. Victory will definitely belong to us." Tang Xiao, observing from the captain's office, knew that Count Dooku's words were directed at him. He smiled faintly and murmured, "Long time no see, Count Dooku." Count Dooku had already begun engaging with others, no longer focusing on Tang Xiao. For him, Tang Xiao's secret presence here confirmed everything he needed to know, and it reassured him. He understood that Tang Xiao had not given up. The maiden voyage ceremony of the Endless-class super aircraft carrier was grand, and the assembly of 6 super battleships instilled immense confidence in the Confederation of Independent Systems. Despite the immense pressure from the Galactic Empire, they still had enough strength to resist to the end. Count Dooku delivered an inspiring speech, emphasizing freedom, fairness, and democracy. He portrayed the Confederacy of Independent Systems as champions of freedom, garnering widespread support from liberals across the galaxy. His speech was impassioned and soul-stirring, his powerful and magnetic voice naturally mobilizing the emotions of every listener. The appearance of the 6 giant ships further ignited the fire in everyone's hearts. Tang Xiao watched the event from the captain's office of the Infinity, feeling satisfied. The situation was developing in the most beneficial direction for him. The Confederation of Independent Systems resisting to the end, preventing the Galactic Empire from achieving peace. Meanwhile, he capitalized on his contract with Palpatine, seizing every moment to develop and grow. After the maiden voyage ceremony, Tang Xiao casually walked out of the captain's office. Except for Count Dooku, everyone present was momentarily confused by his force presence and had no awareness of his existence. Even if all the people here were combined, they wouldn't compare to the weight of you standing here. "Your Excellency," Count Dooku remarked, turning to face Tang Xiao. Chapter 1808, Meeting with Count Dooku. Tang Xiao smiled and said, "It's already an honor for me that you didn't draw your sword directly after seeing me." Count Dooku made an inviting gesture and led Tang Xiao towards the hangar platform. As they walked, he said, "Do you think I really mind you negotiating peace with Palpatine? Ha ha ha, no." He laughed heartily. "Perhaps I was very angry at the time. I felt that you had abandoned the agreement we had made." He continued, "But soon, I also understood the plight of the Dawn Principality. In this war, the attention and pressure you have endured are immense. I can't even imagine what would happen if the Galactic Empire broke through your border defenses without a peace negotiation, especially considering your extremely advanced battleship technology. If Palpatine gets his hands on it, it would be catastrophic. It's really great that you can understand us. Don't worry, Count Dooku, our positions are always the same. The Galactic Empire will always be our common enemy," Tang Xiao replied with a smile. He was no longer the political novice he once was and understood the implications of Count Dooku's words. He also knew that Count Dooku would not easily forget the previous separate peace talks and would likely retaliate when the time was right. Moreover, Count Dooku was undoubtedly coveting the mysterious technologies of Dawn Planet. Tang Xiao was aware that, despite not being recorded in the Book of Sith as a true Sith Lord, Count Dooku, who had long despaired of the light and fallen into the dark side, would never have good intentions. As they spoke, they took the rail transit to the hangar platform. Count Dooku once again earnestly invited Tang Xiao and his wife to board his private ship, the Geonosis Solar Sail Shuttle. The spaceship took off, and Count Dooku specifically asked the pilot to circle the 6 giant ships a few more times. The massive warships, so large that it was almost impossible to see their ends, passed by the spherical porthole, giving an incomparable sense of awe. When the spaceship flew over the Slaughter battleship, Tang Xiao pointed to the 2 devices on both sides of the Slaughter that had replaced the Conqueror-class standard high-energy directional electromagnetic pulse cannon and asked, "What modifications have you made to the Slaughter?" Count Dooku stroked his snow-white beard and smiled proudly. "This is our top secret, but if His Excellency the Archduke asks personally, of course, I will tell you everything." This is a superweapon equipped with the biochemical weapon trihexalon. Rather than those chemical names, I prefer to call it Dragon's Breath. This name is indeed very domineering, Tang Xiao said, looking at the huge device emitting an ominous green light through the porthole. But biochemical weapons? Isn't this thing used to fight against ships? Count Dooku shook his head. Of course not. Trihexalon is a super biological weapon with a very high contagion and fatality rate, and Dragon's Breath can spread this virus across an entire planet's surface in a short time. In less than a week, that planet will turn into a dead zone. He showed a cruel smile and added, moreover, the planetary shield cannot block the Dragon's Breath. Any planet, as long as the slaughter has the slightest chance to catch it, will be completely destroyed by the Dragon's Breath. Tang Xiao was quite accustomed to such murderous speeches, like killing an entire planet with one breath, because he himself was such a person. He turned sideways and asked, "So, you are already preparing for DS1? Count Dooku's expression darkened. Yes, it seems you have also received some news. Palpatine has officially launched the DS1 plan. He did a very good job of keeping secrets. If we hadn't known about the existence of the DS1 plan in advance, and then worked backwards, it would have been absolutely impossible to trace the various investments dispersed into millions. In fact, they all point to the same project, Tang Xiao said. Once DS1 is completed, it will pose a fatal threat to us. Planetary offensive and defensive battles will no longer exist, and ordinary planetary shields cannot withstand DS1's shots. The planet will be directly destroyed. If the fleet cannot resist the advance of DS1, then everything in its path will be reduced to ruins. Count Dooku spoke in a deep voice. That's why I displayed the Dragon's Breath. If Palpatine wants to use DS1 against me, then I will use the Dragon's Breath without restraint. He glanced at Tang Xiao, an inexplicable smile appearing on his face. Of course, I would never mind sharing the technology related to the Dragon's Breath with you. You are too generous, Count Dooku. This is exactly what I want, Tang Xiao replied, not refusing the offer. Although he had already made plans to confront DS1, the future Death Star, and had begun preparations, there was no need to discuss it here. To fight against the Death Star, Tang Xiao had the same idea as Count Dooku, to deter each other. However, compared to the Confederacy of Independent Systems, which had limited technical power, Tang Xiao had many things that could deter the Death Star. He just needed to find the easiest one to achieve. He thought for a moment and then reminded, however, I am afraid that just relying on the Dragon's Breath cannot truly stop Palpatine. We also need more powerful weapons. Naturally, Count Dooku smiled. We are currently studying the technology of the extractor. I believe that if we can make progress, an enlarged extractor will be able to destroy a planet. However, we are still encountering many difficulties in our current research. If you could send some engineers who have participated in the development of particle spears to support us, our progress should be faster. Tang Xiao smiled slightly, recognizing the request. Are you encountering great difficulties in your research? How did I hear that the construction of the Devastation-class battleship has already begun? Count Dooku's expression changed suddenly, his whole demeanor turning cold. You are indeed very well informed, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, he said coldly. Ha ha! Tang Xiao responded with a sunny laugh. Don't be nervous, Count Dooku. The particle light spear is indeed too sensitive. I still dare not send engineers here. However, I do have a few teams that have conducted research and development on the extractor cannon, and they will be helpful to you. Don't worry, the Confederacy of Independent Systems is resisting the attack of the Galactic Empire, and I will naturally not begrudge it. The gloom on Count Dooku's face disappeared, and he clapped his hands and laughed. Very good, very good. Ha! Chapter 1809, Deployment of the Confederation of Independent Systems. The Grand Maiden Voyage ceremony of the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier concluded with much fanfare. According to prior arrangements, the captain of the first ship, Infinity, was appointed to be the Neimoidian General Martuk. This decision was made for two primary reasons. Firstly, Martuk had demonstrated exceptional performance in the Battle of Maristal Planet and the Battle of Rhinos Planet, earning recognition from Tang Xiao. he was one of the few relatively reliable generals within the Confederation of Independent Systems. Secondly, his appointment served as a gesture of goodwill towards the Trade Federation. The Trade Federation had significantly contributed to the development and manufacturing of the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier, and with Newt Gunray now being very compliant, Martuk's appointment was also a form of acknowledgement for their efforts. Tang Xiao had more important tasks lined up for the Trade Federation in the near future. After the Infinity supercarrier entered service, it was assigned to Severance Tan's fleet, replacing the battleship Destruction as her new flagship. Although the sizes of the two super battleships were not vastly different, the Infinity super aircraft carrier's numerous functions made it a superior flagship compared to the Conqueror class, which was primarily designed as a pure combat ship with energy pipes everywhere. When the Infinity super aircraft carrier was equipped with Marines, Jango Fett and a group of Mandalorian warriors, as well as Master Chief John 117, also secretly boarded the ship. The current defense strategy of the Confederation of Independent Systems is divided into three main parts. The first part is the main force led by General Grievous, stationed on the planet Salukami. This is the primary gathering place of the Confederation of Independent Systems. The Dark Titan battleship is located here, with its immensely powerful 500-meter caliber supermatter electromagnetic gun, providing a significant deterrent to the fleet of the Galactic Empire. In the previous year-long offensive and defensive battle on Salukami, the Shadow Titan battleship played a crucial role. This terrifying battleship proved to be even more formidable in defensive operations. Under heavy protection, the Darkness did not need to consider tactical maneuvers and only needed to keep aiming and firing. Before Knight-class Star Destroyers and Imperial-class Star Destroyers appeared in large numbers, the 500-meter caliber supercannon of the Darkness was like a child with a slingshot against a Jaeger-class battlecruiser. There was no contest. With the addition of Severance Tan, Count Dooku also learned to rely on the force induction of the Dark Jedi. The Shadow's tactic of directly targeting and destroying the opponent's flagship from a long distance became invincible. As time passed, the fleet reform plan of the Confederation of Independent Systems continued to advance. The Confederate fleet was now equipped with a considerable number of Behemoth-class battlecruisers and Divine-class destroyers. Each time the Galactic Empire fleet attacked, the dense Yamato artillery bombardment would cause them significant losses almost immediately. Given the current battle situation, it was still a distant hope for the Galactic Empire to capture the planet Salukami in a short time. The second part of the Confederation's power lies in the forces on the sides and rear, often referred to as the smuggling fleet. This fleet cooperates with Titan Security and the Scourge Legion, which are active in Hutt space, to expand their influence. The primary purpose of this fleet is to ensure the supply line of Hutt space. Currently, the Hutts are embroiled in a struggle between the Desaligic family and the Basadi family. Although it cannot be described as a civil war, the overt and covert fighting, the conflict between the two families had almost never ceased for a single day. Such a chaotic situation naturally provided external forces with an opportunity to exploit it. During the era of the Galactic Republic, Speaker Palpatine had been secretly aiding Jabba, a core member of the Desaligic family, in an attempt to expand his influence in Hutt space. The situation of the Basadi family was more complicated. The insidious and cunning tycoon Aruba had made the Basadi family more dangerous. At the same time, he had gradually marginalized the ineffective Gadula, allowing Tang Xiao to diminish the influence of the Basadi family. However, facing the strong pressure from the Desaligic family, Aruba also needed more foreign aid. Thus, he swayed between Count Dooku and Tang Xiao, and with their overt and covert assistance, he was able to resist the Desaligic family. Additionally, Hutt space was originally a place where countless smugglers, gangs, and bounty hunters mingled. Count Dooku used Hutt space to obtain a large amount of supplies sent from other star regions, and Tang Xiao also secretly shipped a lot of goods through this area. This process required the escort of a powerful fleet, which was the role of the smuggling fleet. The third part of this equation was Severance Tan's fleet. Severance Tan temporarily left the Principality of Dawn and joined the Confederation of Independent Systems. This was an agreement reached between Tan and Tang Xiao under special circumstances. What were these special conditions? The destruction of the Second System Army of the Republic. At that time, Master Windu led the Second Galaxy Army from the Nubian planet in the core circle of the Milky Way on an expedition to the planet Mandalore and surrounding star areas. His plan was to break away from Palpatine, who had been confirmed as the Sith Lord, and preserve the next spark for the Galactic Republic and the Jedi Order. However, neither Severance Tan, Tang Xiao, nor Count Dooku cared about Master Windu's plans. For them, including Palpatine, there was always a consensus. The Jedi Order must die. Therefore, as soon as the Second System Army passed through the star area where the Mandalorian planet and the Neutralist Alliance were located, they were immediately targeted by Severance Tan. After some operations, the main force of the Second System Army was annihilated. This battle created a conscious and de facto power vacuum on the planet Mandalore and within the Neutralist Alliance. Due to the disastrous defeat of the Republic fleet, the Neutralist Alliance, which originally had little confidence in the Galactic Republic, became even more worried. They had initially claimed to be neutral, but now they simply did not want to follow the Republic. At the same time, because the Akiva planet, the hidden industrial base of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, was exposed during this battle, the previous method of secretly manufacturing robots and warships for the Confederacy and then quietly sending them there no longer worked. After being exposed, a force had to guard this location. Under these circumstances, Severance Tan had a basis to apply to Tang Xiao to go to the planet Mandalore. She could develop freely in this direction based on the Neutral Galaxy Alliance and had a very free stage for her performance. At the same time, in order to stabilize the situation on the planet Akiva, Count Dooku had to support Severance Tan's actions. Chapter AT-10, The Situation Around the Planet Mandalore. For Tang Xiao, Severance Tan's expedition fleet was a crucial step in his plan to intervene in the star systems surrounding the planet Mandalore. The region was far from the Principality of Dawn, and they had no established presence there. Even the Confederation of Independent Systems had limited influence in this area, making Severance Tan's mission particularly challenging. The fleet faced significant logistical issues, struggling to secure effective supplies and finding only a few planets where warships could be repaired. Acquiring new warships was even more difficult. The recent battle, where Severance Tan defeated the main force of the Second Galaxy Army, was a testament to her unparalleled military prowess. This victory solidified her reputation as the galaxy's top general, a position that others could only aspire to. To expand influence in such a complex and challenging region, the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier was the best choice. With its formidable presence, Severance Tan could gradually establish her own sphere of influence in the star area where the Neutral Galaxy Alliance was located. She could even intervene in the affairs of Mandalore through Jango Fett. If successful, this would create friction with the Confederation of Independent Systems, complicating the Galactic Empire's efforts to defeat them. Severance Tan might even recreate the historic alliance between the Mandalorian Crusaders and the Sith Empire from 4,000 years ago, posing a significant threat to the Galactic Republic. To ensure this plan's success, Tang Xiao intended to wait for Darth Lilim to recover from her injuries before sending her to assist Severance Tan. He also needed to ensure Tan's safety. Darth Lilim was not suitable for aiding the Geth in the north, as this would give the Galactic Empire an excuse to accuse the Principality of Dawn of colluding with the Geth and committing crimes against humanity, society, and civilization. Therefore, sending her to Severance Tan was a strategic move, especially since they had previously cooperated. In the Mandalorian sector, the lineup was formidable: Severance Tan, the Sith Lord Darth Lilim, the true Mandalorian leader Jango Fett, and the legendary soldier Master Chief Wang. Such a team was more than capable of causing significant disruption on Mandalore. The current situation on Mandalore was also highly complex. After the destruction of the Second System Army, the Death Watch, led by Keo Vizsla, launched coups across the planet. Following prolonged fighting and riots, Vizsla successfully overthrew Almec, the former Prime Minister of Mandalore, and declared himself Grand Duke of Mandalore. After the establishment of the Galactic Empire, Vizsla immediately pledged allegiance to Palpatine, who accepted his status. The Galactic Empire lacked the resources to send a fleet into this star area, so Palpatine allowed Vizsla to contend with Severance Tan. However, Vizsla himself faced significant challenges, with uprisings occurring frequently on Mandalore. The Death Watch was seen as a group of terrorists, and the populace was resistant to their rule. To gain more support, Vizsla backed the young Bo-Katan Kryze as the planet's prime minister, serving as his deputy. Bo-Katan was the sister of Satine Kryze, the former Grand Duke of Mandalore. By promoting her, Vizsla hoped to gain some acceptance from the people. However, the situation remained volatile and fraught with complications. Transcendent Vizsla became the Grand Duke of Mandalore, causing the planets in the Neutral Galaxy Alliance to sever their ties with Mandalore. The Neutral Galaxy Alliance, previously managed by Satine Kryze, had been temporarily led by her Prime Minister, Almec, after her disappearance. Although the planets were discontented, Almec's leadership was at least somewhat acceptable. However, with the rise of the terrorist Cao Chao Vizsla, the situation became untenable. Consequently, the Neutral Galaxy Alliance disbanded entirely. The regions surrounding Mandalore descended into chaos. Some factions supported the Galactic Empire, while others backed the Confederation of Independent Systems. Many planets chose to remain neutral amidst the turmoil. Despite the disorder, several individuals kept a close watch on Mandalore, contemplating their next moves. In Sundari City, the capital of Mandalore, Cao Chao Vizsla stared at the riot warnings scattered across the planetary map, his expression grave. On the broad bridge of the Infinity, Severance Tan stood before a holographic star map, silently contemplating the location of Mandalore. In the barracks preparation area, Jango Fett and his Mandalorian warriors, who had undergone the Spartan Transformation Project, gathered to discuss Mandalore's future. The Master Chief, clad in his power armor, sat beside them in silence, indifferent to their opinions. On the planet Dathomir, in an abandoned temple, John Shen, cloaked in black and exuding a gloomy aura, gazed into the void towards Mandalore. His deep dark eyes seemed to pierce through the planet's turmoil. In Hutt space, on the Nar Shaddaa satellite, Darth Tenebris hid in a bar's corner, his face weary and one hand missing. Despite his disheveled appearance, his eyes gleamed with excitement. Elsewhere on the satellite, a spaceship landed at a high-tower spaceport. A Bithman, identical to Darth Tenebris, disembarked, scanning the area for his target, to kill and replace. On an unknown planet, in a small fishing village, Obi-Wan Kenobi prepared a thick fish soup. He brought it into a shack and fed it to Satine Kryze, who lay pale on a recliner. Near a deserted asteroid close to the Yavin 4 satellite, 5 dilapidated Jaeger-class battlecruisers were docked. On one of the battleship bridges, Master Windu, Master Ki-Adi-Mundi, and others discussed their plans, fueled by a desire for revenge. The planet Mandalore was on the brink of another devastating conflict, driven by hidden forces. Whether this storm would lead to the planet's end or its rebirth remained unknown. Tang Xiao, having already positioned several of his pieces on Mandalore, prepared to return to the Dawn Planet via Hutt space. On the way, he decided to visit Nar Shaddaa, instructing the pilot to alter their course towards the Smuggler's Moon. Chapter 1811, Death of the Sith Lord, Part 1. Smuggler's Moon, Nar Shaddaa. One of the most powerful races in the galaxy, the Hutts, hail from the planet Nal Hutta, with its satellite being Nar Shaddaa. The original landscape of Nal Hutta is swampland, an environment where the Hutts, as a gastropod race, can thrive and develop, much like the Semiris. However, the Hutts are far superior to the Semiris in terms of foundation and strength. This is a natural outcome of species evolution. On a planet with Loess, gastropods can never compete with primates. In the swamp, the Hutt can move as swiftly as a snake without the risk of sinking. In such an environment, even 20 humans are no match for a single Hutt. Due to the extreme scarcity of heavy metal resources on Nal Hutta, its industry quickly reached its limit. Jungles were bulldozed, seas evaporated, and countless industrial oils filled the swamps, leading to species mutations and the proliferation of terrifying creatures and deadly poisonous miasmas. Consequently, once the Hutts mastered space navigation technology, they relocated to Nar Shaddaa. They moved all heavy industry, commerce, and other environmentally damaging activities to this satellite. The Hutts' expansion quickly included places like Nar Hakar and Nar Karga, and any planet with Nar in its name was first discovered and colonized by them. Resources from these planets were funneled back to Nar Shaddaa, making it the de facto core of Hutt civilization. On Nar Shaddaa, the Hutts constructed countless super-tall towers. Structures several thousand meters high are common, with some reaching tens of thousands of meters. This allowed the small satellite to support a population of 100 billion, most of whom are Hutts. This transformation of Nar Shaddaa was thorough and extensive. The ancient Hutt Empire's ability to contend with the Galactic Republic, which occupied almost the entire galaxy, was largely due to the formidable strength of Nar Shaddaa. Despite the Republic's vast resources, it failed to conquer the Hutts, with Nar Shaddaa playing a crucial role. In terms of industry and population, Nar Shaddaa is one of the top stars among the countless planets in the galaxy. Meanwhile, Nal Hutta has reverted to a more natural state, becoming a paradise for some ancient Hutt families. They built luxurious manors and labyrinths in the swamps, living opulent lives. The planet now has almost no industrial facilities, remaining predominantly swampland. After the Hutt Empire surrendered to the Galactic Republic, the Hutts entrenched themselves in their ancient territory, known as Hutt Space, and continued to develop their power. They shifted their focus from industry to various illegal businesses, including smuggling, the slave trade, spice trade, kidnapping, assassination, gambling, and other illicit activities. Hutt Space is managed as a monolithic entity, making it difficult for the Galactic Republic to exert control. Thus, even if Hutts are wanted for crimes elsewhere, they can return to Hutt Space and evade the Republic's reach. As a result, the Hutts became leaders of the galaxy's dark forces, instilling fear in the Galactic Republic. Nar Shaddaa, in particular, became the center of the Hutt underground empire, a place rife with filth and corruption. In the shadowy depths of Nashada, a place where sin is the norm and justice is a distant memory, power and money reign supreme. This satellite, known as the Smuggler's Moon, is a haven for powerful gangs and criminal forces. Its counterpart, Sojourn, once used by Darth Plagueis to entertain the galaxy's most nefarious figures, now stands as the core of Geth, aptly renamed the Moon of Geth. At the back door of a small bar, nestled at the base of Nashada Tower, a short, inconspicuously dressed bizman slipped out. His deep, pupilless eyes were pools of darkness. After ensuring the coast was clear, he vanished into the shadows, reappearing moments later in the heart of a decrepit minaret in the most chaotic neighborhood. He took the elevator to the 244th flue, R, where he finally allowed himself to collapse beside the bed, exhausted. After a long pause, he forced his eyes open, fighting off the overwhelming fatigue. He began to inspect the items he had brought back: a blood-red kyber crystal, a bottle of crudely made spirits, and a pack of potent, low-grade spices with dangerous side effects. Without hesitation, he poured the spices into the bottle, shook it, and downed the concoction in one gulp. For most beings, even a robust Wookiee, this would be a death sentence. But the Bisman clutched the blood-red kyber crystal tightly, enduring the excruciating pain as the crystal's light enveloped him. This kyber crystal, once part of a dark Jedi Knight's lightsaber, had been acquired on the black market. As the red light faded, the crystal crumbled to dust in his hand. He opened his eyes, a terrifying and twisted dark side force flickering within them. The fatigue and weakness vanished. He stood up, opened the door, and stepped out. 2 drunken Nikto-men loitered outside. They greeted him with malicious grins, demanding money for more alcohol. Before they could finish their threats, they clutched their throats and collapsed, blood pouring from their necks where stones had pierced them. The Bisman didn't pause. He quickened his pace, disappearing into the darkness. He knew he had to keep moving. The towering structures of Nashada, the billions of inhabitants, and the chaotic environment offered no sanctuary. There was no hiding, no escape, only relentless pursuit. Darth Tenebris was acutely aware that his efforts to regain his former power had been detected by his pursuer, because the pursuer was himself. Chapter 1812, The Death of the Sith Lord, Part 2. A mysterious Bithman, cloaked in black, wandered through the commercial district on the moon of Nar Shaddaa. This area, designated as a commercial zone by the Hutt authorities, was in reality a lawless black market. Despite the chaos, merchants maintained a semblance of order to attract business. The so-called Hutt authorities were merely the largest local Hutt gangs who occasionally intervened to prevent disruptions that could harm their interests. Planning, in this context, simply meant staking out territory. The Bithman meandered through the area, seemingly aimless, before entering a bar. Behind the counter stood a burly Gamorrean, resembling an upright wild boar, intimidating to most. However, the Bithman showed no fear, despite the Gamorrean being at least 3 times his size. He approached the bar, lowered his head, and spoke slowly. "I'm looking for a Bithman." Bang! The Gamorrean slammed his hand on the bar, producing a dull thud. He leaned down, his sharp fangs menacingly close to the Bithman, and growled, "Pink little one, this is a place for drinking, not for finding someone." The Bithman's head twitched unnaturally, as if fast-forwarded. His voice was dull and distorted. "Give me a glass of wine." The Gamorrean grinned maliciously, grabbed a bottle of low-quality wine, poured a glass, and pushed it over. 70 upi, he demanded, quoting a price 5 times the norm. Upi coins were the common currency in Hutt space, with a conversion rate of about 5 to 6-1 against imperial credits. Ah! Money! The Bithman began to gasp, his head twisting rapidly again. He rummaged through his pockets, eventually producing 2 Galactic Empire credit ingots and tossing them over. The Gamorrean bartender's face grew even more ferocious. He leaned in, growling, "We don't accept credit points here. Boy, are you trying to cheat me?" "Ah, wine." The Bithman raised his head, revealing pale, gray skin, starkly different from the normal light yellow or brown of his kind. His skin looked as if it had been soaked in antiseptic liquid for too long, resembling rotting flesh. He wore a mechanical respirator, with tubes connected to damaged armor on his chest, which swelled and squirmed as if something was being pumped into him. The bartender recoiled in disgust at the sight. Then, the Bithman ripped off his respirator, revealing an indescribably grotesque sight. What lay beneath couldn't be called a mouth. No lips, no teeth, no tongue, not even gums. Just countless strips of rotting flesh, hanging and writhing. The respirator had been stuck to the decaying flesh, and pulling it off tore away more tissue, releasing a putrid stench. Everyone around the Bithman stepped back, repulsed. Ignoring them, he picked up the glass and poured the inferior wine into his grotesque maw. "Ah, wine." "That's enough, you disgusting monster!" The Gamorrean bartender, half terrified and half enraged, drew a blaster pistol from under the bar and aimed it at the Bithman's head. In the next instant, the wineglass exploded in the bartender's hand, causing him to drop the blaster. He looked down at his chest in horror. A tiny arm had already penetrated and grabbed his massive heart. It was that BC man. Floating in the air, he had somehow flashed in front of the Gamorrean from outside the bar, a few meters away, and pierced the Gamorrean's chest with his arm. Seeing the murder, chaos erupted. Some people ran away, others pulled out weapons to defend themselves, and the patrons in the bar rushed over to take revenge. But the BC man seemed unfazed. He took a bottle of cheap wine from the Gamorrean's corpse and poured it directly into his mouth, looking extremely bizarre and terrifying. The people in the bar raised their guns and fired at him wildly. Countless blaster beams were launched, carrying lethal high temperatures and explosive energy. But the BC man's figure suddenly disappeared. The next second, he appeared in front of one of the bartenders holding a gun and asked in a low voice, "I'm looking for a BC man." Not wearing a respirator, his mouth moved as he spoke, and the sound came directly from his throat, accompanied by a foul stench. "You, aren't you?" The bartender stammered, trembling with fear, too scared to even shoot. With a crisp click, the BC man twisted the bartender's neck with a wave of his hand. "Kill him!" someone shouted, and many people around opened fire. However, the BC man vanished again, reappearing in front of another bar customer. But before he could ask anything, he suddenly looked towards the void in another direction, shocked. A burst of fierce fire erupted, and a large number of explosive beams turned the customer into a sieve. But the BC man had already appeared at the door. He put on his respirator again, then jumped more than 10 meters high, grabbed a passing hover car, and and climbed up. With two screams, the passengers and driver of the hovercar were thrown out, their bodies bruised and bloodied. The hovercar then turned around and flew quickly towards a spaceport. The people in the bar looked at each other in confusion, unsure of what to say. They had no choice but to start cleaning up the scene and report what happened to their boss. It was likely that soon, this BC man would have a bounty on his head issued by the gang boss in the black market. As for those who died in the bar, their bodies were thrown outside. If friends or family came to collect them, that was fine. Otherwise, scavengers would pick up the bodies and sell them to the incinerator or send them to a protein processing plant. The order of sin would not change because of this slight disturbance. Thanks to Bookfriend 2230904111508 for the 100 starting coins. Chapter 1813, Destruction Class Battleship. In the luxurious cabin of the Golden Rich class, Adele Ulan stood behind Tang Xiao. She noticed that Tang Xiao seemed to be in a good mood as he gazed at the gradually enlarging Nishada satellite outside the window. Summoning her courage, she asked, Master, what was the destruction class battleship you mentioned to Count Dooku just now? I don't think I've heard of it. Tang Xiao, clearly in high spirits, answered patiently, the destruction class battleship is actually a variant of the Conqueror class battleship. It originally existed as part of the Conqueror class plan. However, after obtaining the extractor's technology, Count Dooku made this type of battleship independent. Despite this, the Destruction class and Conqueror class battleships use the same dock. Adele Ulan listened attentively. As she walked lightly, she came closer to Tang Xiao and slowly squatted down, leaning gently on his thigh like a bird clinging to its owner. Tang Xiao did not reject her gesture, but continued, Count Dooku has no idea how crucial the Masonic alliance is to the industrial system of the Confederation of Independent Systems. He can't hide such a massive project from me. He wanted to demonstrate his capabilities, to show that he could develop an extremely powerful battleship even without my help. But in reality, he sneered. The Destruction-class battleship is just a shoddy product. While it can pose a direct threat to a planet, it is far from capable of truly destroying one. Compared to the Destruction class, I hold the Dragon's Breath in higher regard. At least that super poisonous gas can bypass planetary shields and spread directly on the planet's surface. Adele Ulan let out a laugh like a silver bell. Haha, is Count Dooku's trump card actually worthless? Master, please tell me, what is this ship like? The Destruction-class battleship is 7,892 meters long. Its structure is essentially a huge beam cannon added to the front of the Conqueror-class battleship. The beam cannon itself is almost 3,000 meters long, essentially a massive extractor cannon, Tang Xiao explained, bringing up a holographic projection. Although it was a bit rough and blurry, it clearly depicted the design of a Destruction-class battleship. The secret that Count Dooku was so proud of was like an open book to Tang Xiao. Adele Ulan examined the projection of the battleship and said, if it has a 3,000-meter structure, according to this design, this cannon is enormous. But I don't believe it can destroy a planet. Destroying a smaller satellite that is not protected by a planetary shield is still barely possible, Tang Xiao said. Count Dooku wants to use this thing to threaten DS-1, but that is really not enough. However, he is still taking some actions, which pleases me. As long as he still wants to struggle to survive, he remains useful to me. Wait a minute. Adele Ulan suddenly frowned. Master, this battleship, the 3,000-meter-long giant beam cannon in front, doesn't have any gun positions? Haha, it seems you have noticed it too, Tang Xiao laughed mockingly. You are right. The 4,845-meter-long Conqueror-class battleship is mainly armed with 2 high-energy directional ion pulse cannons and 500 twin-mounted medium turbo laser cannons. The main armament of the 7,892-meter-long Destruction-class battleship is still 2 high-energy directional ion pulse cannons and 500 twin-mounted medium-sized turbo laser cannons. It just adds a giant beam cannon in front, and the position of the 500 guns has not changed at all. He clicked on the holographic projection and continued. So there is nothing on this 3,000-meter-long super beam cannon, and it is completely exposed. Therefore, without a large number of fighter jets to escort it, the destruction-class battleship can be easily destroyed by the enemy. The opponent's fighter group lived up to its name. However, there was nothing they could do. With such a massive energy transmission system, they had no way to solve it. It wasn't easy to make the beam cannon fire, let alone divide a large number of branch structures on this system to install turrets. In the original plot, this battleship intended to bomb the planet Dathomir, but was intercepted by Anakin Skywalker, Kit Fisto, and other Jedi warriors along the way. It was quickly destroyed. Compared to the battleship Venomous Fang, which posed a fatal threat and caused huge panic to the Galactic Republic, it failed to make even a single ripple. Adel Ulan smiled and said, "But it's good that Count Dooku and the others have at least solved the problem of the extractor cannon becoming huge." Indeed, in this regard, it shows that the Quarren engineers under him are not useless, Tang Xiao replied. In comparison, our own DS project is much more advanced. That is the real deterrent, preventing Palpatine from easily using DS1's trump card. Well, Aunt Sonia had no idea what kind of terrible threat they were about to face, but at that time, she could immediately understand that even if she was hiding in the inner circle, we could still get her. Killed her. Adel Ulan said excitedly. Like a water snake, she gradually entangled herself from Tang Xiao's feet and climbed up his solid chest. Tang Xiao didn't refuse. He roughly pulled Adel Ulan up from the ground and kissed her deeply on her red lips. After that intense exchange, Tang Xiao stood up, put on his clothes again, and said, "Let's go to Nashada for a walk." After their intimate moment, Adel Ulan was completely exhausted and leaned lazily on Tang Xiao. However, she still did not dare to disobey his order and quickly stood up shakily to start dressing. She asked, "Master, do we really want to go to such a chaotic place like Nashada? My mother has told me since I was a child that everyone caught in Nashada is a criminal who can be sentenced to death. At least on this point, your mother probably didn't lie to you," Tang Xiao said calmly. "But why do you think it's dangerous to go to Nashada with me?" Well, Adele kissed Tang Xiao deeply again and said intoxicatedly, "Yes, who would dare to pose a threat to us?" "I sensed a very interesting presence in the Force," Tang Xiao said, stroking Adel Ulan's long, silky hair. "Something interesting should happen there. Let's go down and watch the excitement." He could easily use the Force to rejuvenate Adel Ulan, but he usually refrained from doing so. Watching the girl who could barely walk unsteadily, the sickness and darkness in his heart grew more intense. Chapter 1814, Death of the Sith Lord, Part 2. Darth Tenebris was still on the run, and his escape methods were crude. He kept switching between various spaceships, altering routes, and weaving through the complex towers of Nar Shaddaa. His primary goal was to put as much distance as possible between himself and his pursuer. He knew that his pursuer was tracking him in a similarly rough manner, relying on a faint sense of the Force to follow him relentlessly. Tenebris had not yet attempted to leave the Nar Shaddaa satellite in a spaceship, mainly because he hadn't planned his next escape route. Leaving the resource-rich Nar Shaddaa without a clear plan would be risky. If tracked again, finding another place as advantageous for evasion would be difficult. He needed a fast enough spaceship, enough Upi coins, and a secret hyperspace channel to confirm his next hiding place. Ideally, he would find a contact on the next planet to assist with his placement. The priority was to gather enough resources to avoid running out of supplies after leaving Nar Shaddaa. For now, the most critical task was to distance himself as quickly as possible while the Force sense was still active. This would give him enough room to maneuver when the sense eventually faded. Tenebris knew that his recent use of the Force had likely been detected. His pursuer was none other than himself, or more precisely, his own body. Inside his corpse, Darth Malthal had implanted an extremely deranged soul, someone Tenebris once knew but never imagined would still exist, Darth Venomous, another apprentice of Darth Tenebris. After Tenebris's primary apprentice, Darth Plagueis, grew powerful and intelligent, Tenebris feared betrayal. Secretly, he recruited another apprentice, Darth Venomous. Venomous was incredibly talented, particularly in lightsaber combat, though less skilled in other Force abilities. Tenebris had intended to cultivate Venomous as a weapon to eliminate Plagueis if he ever became uncontrollable. However, Tenebris was eventually assassinated by Plagueis and later resurrected by Darth Malthael using the Force of Death. After his resurrection, Tenebris learned that Venomous had sought revenge against Plagueis, but was defeated and killed. Plagueis did not let death be the end for Venomous. Instead, he imprisoned Venomous on his dark altar, repeatedly killing and resurrecting him for over 20 years. During this time, Plagueis conducted horrific experiments on Venomous, driving him to madness with endless pain and suffering. After 20 years of torture, Venomous had become a madman consumed by hatred. When Malthael resurrected Tenebris, he did so in the body of another Bith man with average Force talent to control him. Despite this, Tenebris's ambition remained undeterred. He eventually escaped, using his advanced Force techniques to sever Malthael's influence. However, he knew that Malthael's methods were ruthless and that he would stop at nothing to kill him. What Tenebris did not anticipate was that Malthael had implanted Venomous's ghost into his body, allowing his own corpse, now possessed by Venomous's vengeful spirit, to pursue him. For decades, the rotting corpses have been hunting you down. Darth Venomous had already gone mad. At this point, he had long forgotten the relationship between master and apprentice, although he had once been a very loyal apprentice. After being trapped in the body of Darth Tenebris and subjected to the dual brainwashing of Darth Malthael's Death Force and Sith alchemy, Darth Venomous had only one thought: capture Darth Tenebris and kill him. Then he could take his place. His own body was naturally closely connected to his soul. After Darth Tenebris first tried to fight off Darth Venomous, who was relentlessly pursuing him, he realized that his current body, with its average talent, was no match for Venomous. Because Venomous's body was one of the most talented in the galaxy with the Force. Therefore, Darth Tenebris gave everything he had to Shen Qiao, escaped on his own, and tried to delay as much time as possible, at least preventing Darth Venomous from affecting him and Shen Qiao. This was all part of the grand plan orchestrated by his benefactor. He had been running away like this for nearly a year, and Darth Venomous's pursuit showed no signs of stopping. This was exactly what he once said: "When a Sith Lord wants to kill you, you'd better make a plan that is 1,000 times worse than the worst-case scenario you can imagine, because a Sith Lord can do anything." But this time, Darth Tenebris felt more and more uneasy. Through his connection with the Force, he seemed to have foreseen his own death. Although the outcome of death was already sealed when he left John Shen and the planet Dathomir, the feeling of impending death had never been so clear until now. Darth Tenebris gritted his teeth as he continued to accelerate the spacecraft, flying towards a smuggler's area ahead at high speed. However, at that moment, he suddenly sensed an extremely powerful dark side force erupting from the upper floor of one of the 10,000-meter-high towers in the smuggler area. Someone was fighting with the Force. Not only that, but he was also so familiar with the Force power of one of them. Yes, so familiar. Because, as part of a trade, he had taught this man everything he had learned in his life in exchange for the chance to be resurrected. "Darth Malthael, you are here." Darth Tenebris gritted his teeth. Is this the arrangement of the Force? Or is it destiny? His eyes gradually became crazed. "Ha ha ha ha! Now that you are here, Darth Malthael, then suffer death! Die with me!" Darth Tenebris suddenly turned the direction of the spacecraft and rushed straight towards the tower. An extremely crazy plan took shape in his mind. That's right, since he already had a premonition that he would die on Nashada, why not bring one more person down with him? Thanks to Obi-Wan for the 1999 starting coins. Chapter 1815, The Dark Side of Misfortune. An hour before Darth Tenebris succumbed to madness and despair, the vengeful spirit of Darth Venomous achieved his goal. Guided by the connection between his body and soul, he tracked the scent of his target to an underground black market. After killing several people, he frightened a few gang members into revealing that a BC man had purchased a Kyber crystal from a deceased Dark Jedi. Following these clues, the spirit of vengeance arrived at his previous hiding place, a dilapidated tower over 1,000 meters high. Among the countless towering structures in Nashada, This tower was essentially a slum. The true filth, however, lurked in the ravines on the ground, home to the most vicious individuals who were not even counted in population statistics. The Spirit of Vengeance took the elevator to the top, the 290th floor. He took a deep breath, sensing, not here. He continued to control the elevator, searching floor by floor. Several smugglers entered the elevator, and seeing the Spirit of Vengeance inputting each floor as a destination, became furious. One pulled out a blaster pistol and pointed it at his head. "You desperate boy, are you kidding us?" "Have you seen a BC?" the Spirit of Vengeance murmured. "Look at your mother's bantha excretion hole," one of them shouted, raising his hand to hit him with the butt of his gun. But in the next second, his entire body was grabbed by an invisible force and twisted into a knot under terrible pressure. Blood spurted from his deformed body, turning the elevator into a sea of blood. "Ah! Ah! Monster! Monster!" the others screamed and fled. The Spirit of Vengeance ignored them, continuing his search floor by floor. The 288th floor, the 287th floor, the 286th floor. He persevered, and finally, when the elevator stopped at the 244th floor, he took a deep breath. A terrifying golden light shone in his eyes. "Found it! Gah! Found it!" He made a distorted sound of unknown meaning and stepped into the room where Darth Tenebris had been hiding. With a flash of his lightsaber, the door was cut to pieces. The Spirit of Vengeance entered, squatted down, and smeared a handful of powder on the ground. He pulled off his respirator, exposing his rotten mouth, and swallowed the powder. The aura remaining on the Kyber crystal was immediately sensed by him. A terrible laugh emanated from his hollow mouth. "Found it! Found it!" Master, who was the interesting person you mentioned earlier?" Adel Ulan asked cautiously. Darth Malthael smiled. "Ah, my master's master. Should I call him master? He betrayed me, so I used Sith alchemy to create a twisted and evil vengeful spirit to hunt him down. Heh, using his own corpse to hunt his soul. It's quite an interesting thing." "I don't quite understand," Adel Ulan admitted. She had extensive knowledge about battleships and industry, but knew nothing about the Force and souls. "All you need to know is that I sense the breath of the Spirit of Vengeance." "He is here, on the Nishada satellite," Darth Malthael said lightly. "My master has been running for a long time. He should die. I don't know what he is doing behind the scenes, but he would rather betray me than his own body. But obviously, I can't let him continue. Today, he must die here." "Yes. Anyone who betrays us must die," Adel Ulan's eyes flashed with a strange light. After following Darth Malthael for a long time, she had also developed a similar ruthlessness. Under the influence of her surroundings, she had developed certain habits. Surprisingly, there was a hint of excitement in her heart at the thought of killing. Darth Malthael led her to a random hovercar, and they arrived at an inconspicuous bar. He ordered a bottle of wine and found a corner to sit down. Bars are excellent places for gathering information. People from all walks of life frequent them, and the flow of patrons is constant. After a busy day, almost everyone is willing to sit in a bar. If you want to find out information or learn about recent events, there is no better place than a bar. Especially in a place like Nishada, where crime and danger are omnipresent, gathering intelligence is essential. An otaku who stays at home all day would not survive here because they might not even realize someone is trying to kill them. After settling Adel Ulan, Darth Malthael called a waiter over, tossed a handful of Upi coins to the Farron man, and said calmly, "Tell me what you know recently, especially anything related to the BC people." "Guest, have you just arrived here? You should check Nishada's Black Network. There are a lot of messages on that network every day," the waiter replied, pocketing the coins. "It's okay. I just like listening to your stories," Darth Malthael said. "Then let's start from nearby." The Farron waiter, despite being a man, wore tight clothes and heavy makeup, giving him a coquettish appearance. He winked at Darth Malthael and said, "As for the BC people, the mountain gang in our district just recruited a BC mercenary yesterday. I heard his marksmanship is very accurate." The waiter knew everything about the local happenings and shared his knowledge. The BC are a developed race from the core circle, and very few venture to the galaxy's edges, so there wasn't much information about them. The waiter was dedicated, whether for the money or Darth Malthael's appearance. He even took out a personal terminal and stood next to Darth Malthael, using his orchid finger to search for information on the dark web. Despite Adele Ulan, a peerless beauty, sitting nearby, he didn't dare to take a second look. Even Adele Ulan, who grew up among top wealthy aristocrats, couldn't help but roll her eyes at the Farron man's behavior. Ah, there is this news, but it's very far away. Last night, in the DI-6617 business district in the Eastern Hemisphere, which is the territory of the Sea Dog Gang, they put a bounty on a BC man. The reward isn't much, 8,000 Upi. There are no photos, only a video. Look, I worked really hard to find this for you, the Farron man said, holding up his orchid finger and pointing towards Darth Malthael. If you want to live the rest of your life with only one hand, then you can try, Darth Malthael said coldly. Oh, so fierce, the Farron man said coquettishly. Ah, look, there's another one here. Yesterday, a BC man bought a Kyber crystal. Darth Malthael's eyes flashed fiercely, and he laughed menacingly. It seems you have no money, Darth Tenebris. You actually want to use something like the Kyber crystal? Buying from this low-level black market like a street stall. No wonder you got caught. He raised his hand and waved, causing the Farron man, who had been annoying him for a long time, to faint immediately. However, just as he was about to get up and leave, he found himself surrounded by a group of vicious mercenaries. The leader, a burly man, stared at Adele Ulan with lust and greed in his eyes, almost overflowing. Ah, I didn't expect to meet such a top-notch girl here. Ha! How about accompanying my brothers for a while? He sneered. The smile on the corner of Darth Malthael's mouth turned bloodthirsty. He glanced sideways, but not at the black mercenary. His eyes fell on a middle-aged man in ordinary leather clothes on the other side of the bar. The man held a glass of wine, pointing at Adele Ulan, and said to the drunken mercenaries beside him, "See that delicate beauty? Let me tell you, she's the billionaire daughter of a large company. If you catch her, you can not only enjoy the taste of a super beauty that you can't usually see on the holographic network, but you can also ask her family for a ransom of at least 100 million UPI. Ha ha ha! Don't lie to me. A mercenary reeking of alcohol laughed lewdly. Why would I lie? She's the CEO of Rendili Interstellar Power Company. Her name is Adele Ulan. If you check on the black internet now, it shouldn't be difficult to find her information. A ransom of 100 million. I guess I insulted her a bit. The middle-aged man sneered. Hearing this, some of the smarter patrons in the bar began to pay and leave. Those who were not yet drunk knew what Rendili Interstellar Power Company meant, and they understood the significance of the CEO's position. Even with a bit of rationality left, no one wanted to mess with such an entity, but many others remained. Some were driven by lust, others were so vicious that they had nothing to lose, and some were simply too drunk to care. They looked at Adele Ulan with eyes full of primitive desire, approaching her and eyeing her beautiful face and graceful figure. Adele Ulan was extremely scared, but she glanced at Darth Malthael sitting in front of her, and a surge of courage filled her heart. Though her delicate body trembled slightly, she held her ground, gripping her wine glass tightly with her white fingers, saying nothing. Darth Malthael suddenly sighed. Actually, I should have known. When the dark side begins to suffer misfortune, it means that the balance of the Force has been broken again. After I discovered Darth Tyne Burrows was so unlucky, I should have considered my own luck. All right. He stood up and said coldly to the middle-aged man, I really didn't expect that just by bringing my wife over for a glass of wine, I would meet a Jedi Knight. Heh. The middle-aged man downed the cheap liquor in his glass, took out a metal lightsaber hilt from his waist, and incited the drunkards around him. Don't be afraid. I'm on the same team as you. Capture that woman, and we'll all take turns having fun. Then extort a huge bounty from Rendili. We'll have nothing to worry about for the rest of our lives. Hey. Woman, come on, how about having a few drinks with me? The tall and thick black mercenary next to him, drunk and oblivious to the strange aura Darth Malthael was exuding, reached out to grab Adele Ulan. But the next second, his movements stopped. His outstretched hand slowly lowered, Then he turned around and looked coldly in the direction of the middle-aged Jedi Knight. Since you can recognize a Del Ulan, you should also know who I am. A Jedi Knight. Don't you think it's foolish to incite ordinary people to die in front of me like this? Darth Malthael laughed ferociously. Even if you are a Jedi Master, you should know that challenging me is equivalent to dancing with death. At this moment, not only the black mercenary, but everyone else around him fell silent instantly. They stopped any movement, turned around in unison, and stared at the Jedi Knight. Even though these people were still drunk, still partying, whistling at Adele, and loudly speaking obscene words, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. At that moment, the entire room fell silent. Their faces turned a ghastly shade of purple, and corpse-like spots began to appear on their skin. In an instant, Darth Malthael had transformed them all into undead creatures. These newly formed abominations let out guttural, animalistic roars and charged at the Jedi Master. With a swift motion, the Jedi Master activated his lightsaber, the green plasma blade igniting instantly. He swung his weapon without hesitation, slicing through the nearest zombies with ease. His gaze locked onto Darth Malthael, eyes burning with the flames of vengeance. "Everyone on Nar Shaddaa deserves to die," he shouted. "Rather than letting them continue their better, they perish here. And as for you, Angel of Death, all the devastated creatures in the Milky Way demand your blood as payment." As he spoke, he brandished his lightsaber, creating a flurry of afterimages that were nearly impossible to follow with the naked eye. He slashed down with precision and fury. Darth Malthael raised his hand, and with a simple gesture, Little Klesh's gauntlet flew into Adel Ulan's grasp. Then he extended his hand and unleashed a bolt of lightning towards the Jedi Master, aiming to strike him down. Chapter A16, The Fall of Darth Tenebris. Darth Malthael was merely observing the chaos, so he hadn't brought his soul-stealing sword. Confronted by a Jedi Master, he casually unleashed a bolt of lightning, expecting to end the battle swiftly. To his surprise, the Jedi Master was remarkably resilient, deflecting the lightning with a flick of his lightsaber. Immediately, the Jedi's sword skills were fully deployed, sweeping over like a furious wave. It was the seventh form of lightsaber combat, Vapad. Darth Malthael narrowed his eyes, recognizing that this middle-aged man was a blood warrior, an extreme faction within the Jedi Order that emerged during the late Clone Wars. In a sense, the birth of this group was partly his doing. Due to his strong intervention in this universe, many Jedi Masters, who were supposed to play significant roles in the original plot, were killed. Faced with heavy losses and the deaths of their comrades, many Jedi began to adopt more extreme measures. Under the leadership of Master Windu, this extreme faction, the Blood Warriors, was formed with the slogan, "Blood debt must be paid with blood." Many Blood Warriors practiced the Vapad lightsaber technique created by Master Windu. This technique was developed after Master Windu fully absorbed and learned from the original seventh form, Juyo. Juyo is a lightsaber form exclusive to the dark side, known for its violence and power. Vapad, however, was born out of Juyo, but could be used by those on the light side of the Force. Thus, Vapad could harness the violence of the dark side while remaining aligned with the light, making it exceptionally powerful. The Blood Warriors, due to the destruction of the Jedi Order, had completely abandoned their beliefs. Their sole focus was revenge. This mindset caused many Jedi Knights to fall to the dark side, making their use of the Vapad technique even more formidable. Darth Malthael smiled coldly, and lightning surged in his hands, creating a terrifying power grid that enveloped the Jedi Master. Ubiquitous lightning struck the middle-aged Jedi from all directions. Meanwhile, Darth Venomous, the spirit of vengeance, had locked onto Darth Tenebris. Using the Force signature left in the Kyber crystal that Darth Tenebris had just absorbed, Darth Venomous bound his own Force power to Tenebris's. His expression became increasingly crazed as he rushed to the spaceport, starting another killing spree. His body was that of the supremely talented Darth Tenebris, and his soul was that of a master swordsman. Now, completely unhinged, he was unstoppable. After slaughtering hundreds, he hijacked a large Gozanti-class armed merchant ship, turned the engine power to maximum, and flew towards Darth Tenebris at high speed. At that moment, Darth Tenebris realized he was trapped with no possibility of escape. He had been caught before, but always managed to escape at great cost, whether by bribing mercenaries, involving gangsters in his schemes, or using fallen Jedi and powerful black market weapons. Once, to evade Darth Venomous, he had gathered enough materials from the black market to build a nuclear bomb and detonated it in a town. But now, those options were no longer available. He was out of ammunition, resources, and time. Darth Tenebris knew that the reason the Nashada satellite had been locked onto so quickly this time was ultimately because he had no money. The Kyber crystal used by the Dark Jedi had been found in an ordinary black market with poor security and confidentiality, using his last bit of funds. But at that time, he couldn't care anymore, because in the last chase, he was injured by Darth Venomous, and he urgently needed the Kyber crystal contaminated by the dark side force to restore his condition. Therefore, the black market transaction was quickly found by Darth Venomous, thus locking him in. He had no money, no resources, serious injuries with no time to recover, and far less strength. This was the desperate situation of Darth Tenebris. Ironically, Darth Tenebris was killed by his apprentice Darth Plagueis during his lifetime. Later, after he was resurrected, he taught Darth Malthel everything he had learned throughout his life. Then, he was hunted down by Darth Malthel, who was considered his disciple. What's even more ironic is that what is chasing him is actually the soul of his other former disciple, Darth Venomous, and his own corpse. So, in the final analysis, he doesn't know if he can be regarded as personally nurturing everyone who sent him to a desperate situation. At this time, the battle at the bar was coming to an end. Darth Malthael's fingertips condensed a terrifying bloody lightning. Feeling the terror of this power, the middle-aged Jedi Master became even more frantic. Wapad's sword skills were fully unleashed, as if he were mad, and his attack was like a raging wave. But such an attack, in Darth Malthael's view, was no longer a threat. It's not that this Jedi Master is not strong. In fact, the strength of this Jedi Master is very close to that of the Jedi Council during the Clone Wars. However, the current Darth Malthael is far from the person he was during the Clone Wars. As his research on the dark side force and the force of death deepened, his power continued to grow. Now in the galaxy, only Darth Sidious and Count Dooku could become his opponents. All I saw was Darth Malthael raising his hand and pointing, and the next moment, the Jedi Master's heart was directly penetrated by blood-colored lightning. It was also at this moment that Darth Tenebris sensed Darth Malthael's force. This extremely powerful blood-colored lightning is a unique skill he created himself. And now in the entire galaxy, there is no one who can use blood-colored lightning except those who have accepted Darth Malthael's teachings. The third person. I want you to die, Darth Malthael. Darth Tenebris' eyes were almost crazed. The moment he understood that he could not survive, he had already made up his mind. As a Sith Lord who has reached the pinnacle, the wily Darth Tenebris would never let himself be in a state where he is really out of ammunition and food. Even at this time, he still had a final trump card. This trump card would not help him escape, but it would allow him to launch the final counterattack against Darth Malthael at this last moment. Darth Tenebris drove the spaceship directly towards the tower. Over there, Darth Malthael was preparing to leave, because under his induction, Darth Venomous, the spirit of revenge, was flying towards him. However, under the interference of Darth Tenebris's best rough primordial body, he did not realize that the other party was nearby. He just judged that this was a possibility, so he prepared to change to a place more suitable for fighting and send Adel Ulan away. Because of the Blood Warrior episode just now, his plan was disrupted. Originally, he just planned to watch the fun, but now he had a vague feeling that he seemed to be involved in it and had become one of the participants in this storm. The effeminate Farron just woke up at this moment and stared blankly at the corpses lying around, completely stunned. He looked at Darth Malthael and Adel Ulan standing in front of him, and a warmth flowed out of his lower body. He was literally scared to the point of peeing. Be grateful with the greatest reverence, because he spared your life. Adel Ulan looked down at this disgusting Farron, and after leaving these words, she followed her master's footsteps. Adel Ulan walked out, but the next second, her body was suddenly pushed away by an unseen force. A spaceship crashed directly into the bar without any slowdown. Boom! The spaceship hit Darth Malthael squarely, followed by a violent explosion. The aviation fuel ignited, turning the entire floor into a sea of fire. Everything around was engulfed in flames. The fallen man, who Darth Malthael had carelessly let go, was pierced by a fragment of the wreckage and died instantly. Darth Malthael stood there, motionless. Even without the gauntlet of Little Clash, his unparalleled strength allowed him to form an indestructible force barrier to protect himself. The impact of the spacecraft did not harm him at all. He had pushed Adele Ulan behind him, and with the protection of Little Clash's gauntlet, she was also unscathed. The outer walls of the tower's several floors had been completely blown through. From Darth Malthael's perspective, it was 10,000 meters high in the sky. The thin air and icy wind made survival impossible in this place. Adele Ulan would have suffocated if it weren't for Darth Malthael's force protection. Darth Malthael quietly looked at the BC man standing in front of him. The man appeared ordinary, but exuded a terrifying murderous aura. Darth Malthael said coldly, "Darth Tenebris, who gave you the courage to betray me? This is just a deal, Darth Malthael." Darth Tenebris replied with a ferocious smile. "I used everything I learned throughout my life to exchange for the chance of resurrection, but you shirk it in every possible way and never give me my body back. Who betrayed whom among us?" "Oh, you mean your rotten and stinky body? I thought you didn't miss it anymore," Darth Malthael said, feigning realization. "Look, I'm going to kill you right now. Has your body been returned to you? Why don't you want it? Isn't Darth Venomous your other apprentice, my uncle? I asked him to send your body over. Isn't this arrangement okay?" "It's useless to talk more." Darth Malthael. "You didn't expect to be caught by me here, did you? Is this destiny? The direction of my escape is exactly the direction of your landing, and when you use the power I taught you, I am not far away from you." "Ha ha!" Darth Tenebris laughed wildly. Darth Malthael looked at the Sith Lord, who once controlled everything, with pity. Under constant pursuit and attacks, he was no different from a gangster. His former self-cultivation and calmness were no longer present. He raised his hand, and bloody lightning condensed in his palm. "What you taught me is indeed very powerful, Master. So, now I will use the skills you taught me to send you on your way." "Do you think I will be afraid of you, Darth Malthael?" Darth Tenebris smiled ferociously, and the same bloody lightning also condensed in his hand. But it was clear that his bloody lightning was much weaker than Darth Malthael's. At that moment, a huge figure flew over. It was a Gozanti-class armed merchant ship. The hatch opened, revealing a BC man wearing mechanical armor and a respirator standing at the door, looking coldly at the scene. It was the Spirit of Vengeance, Darth Venomous. Seeing his arrival, Darth Malthael had a mocking smile on his lips. He said lightly, "I think you should really be afraid of me, Darth Tenebris. A masterpiece. This is really a masterpiece. Darth Malthael." Darth Tenebris's eyes were filled with enthusiasm. "Your talent surpasses even Darth Plagueis. At least he could never do this. Put a twisted soul into a corrupt but powerful body. You are truly a genius." "Oh, thank you," Darth Malthael replied with a faint smile. However, the smile on Darth Tenebris's face became a little strange. "But you know what? In fact, I always knew that. Darth Plagueis wanted to kill me, but I really didn't expect him to take action at that moment, when I took him to my domain. The timing was not right at all. His growth was far from what he anticipated, and he should have known that he could learn more from me. However, he couldn't hold back his ambition." Darth Malthael slowly walked forward, while Darth Venomous moved to position himself behind Tenebris, effectively trapping him between them. After all, Darth Tenebris was once an extremely powerful Sith Lord, renowned for his supercomputer-like intellect. For such an enemy, caution was paramount. Darth Tenebris continued, "Of course, it is precisely because of this that he was able to deceive me and kill me. I must applaud his plan, because killing me itself is a monumental achievement. However, he also missed the opportunity to learn my final secret, the rough Primarch. The key to the essence transfer technique lies in the use of the crude body. I had originally planned to take over Darth Plagueis's body. Therefore, I naturally made preparations for my own body." Tenebris's expression turned ferocious. Then, let's die together, Darth Malthael. As he spoke, he raised his hand and made a subtle gesture. In that instant, Darth Malthael felt the connection between himself and Darth Venomous, the spirit of revenge, severed. End of chapter. Chapter A17, Facing Death, Part 1. Darth Malthael was suddenly shocked. Even with his current cultivation and strength, he was extremely horrified by this result. The connection between him and Darth Venomous was interrupted. Such a thing had never happened since he awakened the force of death. Darth Venomous had been resurrected by him and forced into the body of Darth Tenebris. Being resurrected by Darth Malthael meant that through the force of death, a mark of slavery had been established between him and Venomous's soul, ensuring he could never escape Malthael's control. However, this time, Darth Tenebris had managed to sever the connection between Malthael and Venomous. From another perspective, this was equivalent to him cracking Darth Malthael's death force. At the moment the connection was cut off, Darth Malthael saw Darth Venomous standing on the other side, and his eyes changed, becoming turbid, bloodthirsty, chaotic, and distorted. The already corrupt body began to tremble rapidly. Brutal Primarch! Darth Malthael now understood the meaning of what Darth Tenebris had just said. As the only Sith Lord in the entire galaxy who had systematically studied the rough primordial body from ancient times to the present, Darth Tenebris obviously hid something that Malthael did not know. The rough primordial was indeed a very mysterious thing. Unlike the midi-chlorians, which were thought to resonate with the Force in all things, the rough primordial did not exist under normal circumstances and had to be summoned through Darth Tenebris's powers. In a sense, it was almost a unique skill for him. Midi-chlorians dissipate with the death of life, but Course Origins do not. They can still carry part of the life force and even the soul within them. Therefore, the rough body is the key to the essence transfer technique, which is currently the only known method that can directly transfer the soul and consciousness without affecting the subject's force talent. In other words, Darth Tenebris was still hiding the rough Primarch in his body in an unknown way. Or did he have a unique channel that could transmit the rough body into his body? None of this mattered anymore. Darth Malthael's eyes flashed fiercely, and he was already angry. The man in front of him, Darth Tenebris, had deceived him more than once. Do you understand now, Darth Malthael? While I was teaching you everything I had learned in my life, I was also secretly studying you and your death force. Until I discovered that there is a connection similar to a soul mark between you and the resurrected undead. Yes, so I boldly guessed what I needed to do to get rid of your control. Darth Tenebris laughed ferociously. But your power is truly formidable. As long as you control it, even I can't remove it. But that doesn't mean there's no way. Your biggest mistake was using my body to hunt me down. My own body, of course, has my own trump card. Once I used the rough primordial body to send part of my soul back to my own body, then because of the harmony between my soul and my body, the imprint of your death force will be transferred to that part of my own soul. Then, I only need to pull out this part of the soul, and the imprint of your soul in my body will be no more. Isn't it wonderful? Darth Tenebris said proudly. It should be said that you are worthy of being one of the most powerful Sith Lords, with a brain comparable to a supercomputer. You really made me never expect such a situation. Darth Malthael's eyes were gloomy. He admitted the fact that he had been outwitted, but thinking about it from another perspective, he considered the loss now. Because if Darth Tenebris hadn't used his own body to chase him, he might not have been able to force Tenebris into such a desperate situation. In this way, it was actually quite worthwhile. The premise was that he could survive. Let's die together. Darth Malthael. Darth Tenebris's voice turned ominous. I have already completed my plan. Even if you and I perish Tug, Ether, it doesn't matter. Soon, my true heir will rise powerfully in the galaxy. Sooner or later, Planet Dawn will be his. You can give it a try, Darth Tenebris. Darth Malthael replied with a sinister smile. In the next instant, the blood-red lightsaber flashed. Darth Tenebris's head was severed, and Darth Venomous immediately grabbed it, holding it in his hand. There was no resistance, no battle, just a swift, decisive action. Darth Tenebris, once a formidable Sith Lord and renowned battleship designer, met his end under the blade. His apprentices, Darth Plagueis and Darth Venomous, along with his disciple Darth Malthel, and even his own body, all contributed to this outcome. However, the ending felt too anticlimactic, almost lonely in its simplicity. At that moment, Darth Venomous, holding Darth Tenebris's head, entered an even stranger state. A line of smoke was being drawn from Darth Tenebris's body into Darth Venomous. This vengeful spirit was undergoing a drastic transformation. It was the ghost of Darth Tenebris, and it was being absorbed by Darth Venomous. He did this willingly. Darth Venomous, who had been tortured for over 20 years and had gone mad, had died and been resurrected multiple times. His soul was already fragmented. Even in resurrection, he was no longer a complete person. Now, with their souls merging, even Darth Malthel couldn't predict what kind of monster would emerge. Darth Malthel looked at the vengeful spirit before him, his expression more serious than ever. He took a step back and whispered to Adel Ulan, who was hiding behind him, "When the fighting starts, seize the opportunity to run to the Gozanti-class cargo ship and leave. I can't guarantee what will happen next." "Are you going to die?" Adel Ulan asked, trembling. "Even if I die, I can still be resurrected," Darth Malthel reassured her casually. He could indeed be resurrected through the essence transfer technique, but he would lose his body, along with his exceptional force talent and cultivation. End of chapter. Chapter A18, Facing Death, Part 2. Adel Ulan looked at the spirit of vengeance standing before her. Its terrifying presence was palpable, even without words. Behind it loomed the Gozanti-class armed cargo ship, adding to her growing unease. Her legs trembled uncontrollably. The situation was dire. Could she really escape past that monstrous figure? The thin air and icy winds at this altitude of 10,000 meters would be lethal without her husband's protection. But Adele understood why her husband, Tang Xiao, had urged her to flee. He wasn't confident in their survival. Knowing Tang Xiao, if there was even a slight chance of success, he wouldn't have suggested such a desperate plan. Tang Xiao was fiercely protective of his own. He might beat, scold, or abuse his subordinates and slaves, but if an outsider tried, they would face the wrath of a Sith Lord. Now, he was telling her to run for her life. It was clear, Tang Xiao was prepared to die. Darth Malthel stepped forward, his voice filled with anger. "Darth Venomous, you killed Darth Tenebris. Very good, you have completed your goal." "Ah! Ha!" Darth Venomous stood there, his body twitching rapidly, as if caught in a fast-forwarded film. "Now, you can leave," Darth Malthel commanded in a deep voice. "Ah, leave! Ha!" Darth Venomous showed no intention of leaving. The dark side force within him was spiraling out of control, growing more intense by the second. A thick black fog, visible to the naked eye, began to spread. Mist, a phenomenon favored by the Sith Lords of the Darth Tenebris, Darth Plagueis, and Darth Malthel lineage. "Get out of here!" Darth Malthel suddenly shouted. In the next instant, the Spirit of Vengeance's lightsaber struck with blinding speed. A tenth of a second earlier, it had been standing over 10 meters away. Now it had closed the distance and aimed a lethal blow at Darth Malthel's head. A force barrier blocked the strike, but the battle had only just begun. Darth Malthel unleashed a torrent of force lightning from his hands, the destructive energy obliterating everything in its path. Yet the Spirit of Vengeance remained unscathed. It endured the lightning, its body torn by the electricity, but it showed no reaction. More! The Spirit of Vengeance muttered, then moved with blinding speed, striking out dozens of times in an instant. Darth Malthel's lightning formed a grid to block the attacks, but the Spirit of Vengeance used its lightsaber to channel the lightning, withstanding the immense pressure before striking again. The surrounding black mist swirled like a deathly tornado. Darth Malthel summoned the force of death, creating his own mist, and the two forces clashed violently in the space around them. Around Darth Malthel, the force of death formed a terrifying sandstorm, absorbing all life force nearby. The black mist of the Spirit of Vengeance withered everything it touched. The battle between these two fearsome Sith Lords was cataclysmic, affecting all life on the upper and lower levels of the tower. Yet, amidst this chaos, everything was calm around Adel Ulan. Neither the deathly sandstorm nor the dense black mist could come within 2 meters of her. The golden crystals on little cleches, the gauntlets emitted a faint light, and a force barrier constantly surrounded her. This indicated that everything around her posed a fatal threat, triggering the gauntlet's passive protection. Adele Wulan's teeth chattered uncontrollably as she watched the ongoing battle. With her ordinary eyes, she could only make out 2 shadows moving at high speed, unable to discern any details. However, she could tell that the fight between Darth Malthael and the Spirit of Vengeance was moving away from her. Clearly, her husband was creating an opportunity for her to escape. Determined, she gritted her teeth, jumped up, and ran towards the Gozan-class armed cargo ship, approaching from Darth Venomous. The cargo ship's hatch was still open, and it hovered in place. This was her last chance. Adele Wulan ran quickly, soon feeling the bone-chilling cold and suffocating thin air at an altitude of 10,000 meters. The outer wall had been breached by Darth Tenebris's spaceship, losing the protection of the internal pressurized seal. She almost immediately suffered from altitude sickness, gasping for air, but still feeling suffocated. Her lips turned black and blue, and her consciousness began to blur. In a hazy moment, she seemed to see a black shadow rushing towards her, but another majestic figure blocked the attack for her. The next second, she felt herself being propelled into the air by a tremendous force, landing with a thud in a warm place. Adele Wulan regained some consciousness and saw the spaceship cabin slowly closing in front of her. Under the operation of the anti-gravity and life support devices, her suffocation quickly subsided and oxygen returned to her brain, waking her up fully. She saw that Darth Malthael and the Spirit of Vengeance had reached the door of the spacecraft cabin, still locked in fierce combat. Without wasting any time, Adele Wulan rushed to the cockpit in 3 quick steps. She saw a navigation robot sitting in the co-pilot position and jumped into the driver's seat, fastening her seatbelt. She shouted, "Go to the spaceport!" "Yes!" the navigation robot responded. When Adele Wulan and Tang Xiao had come to this bar, they had avoided drawing attention by not driving the Golden Regal ship directly. Instead, they had docked the spaceship at the spaceport and arrived in a hovercar. And now, she remembered his sword. Adele Wulan's eyes were resolute. She knew that although her husband possessed extremely powerful force skills and was one of the top masters in the galaxy even without a lightsaber, having the soul-stealing sword with a hilt of more than 1 meter would make him nearly invincible. Thanks to Juzo Nuomiju, Hiro, and Yuanji for the 500 starting coins. Chapter 1819. A Thrilling Battle. The battle between Darth Malthael and the Spirit of Vengeance, Darth Venomous, was nothing short of terrifying. In the clash between the black mist and the sandstorm, everything was obliterated and all life was annihilated. Everything was devoured. Those caught in the upper and lower levels of the battlefield were often drained by the force of death in an instant, turning into undead creatures, only to be immediately crushed into pieces by the black mist of the vengeful soul. The lightning in Darth Malthael's hand never ceased for a moment. Force lightning is indeed the most versatile skill. Its lethality, controllability, and sustainability are exceptional, and it is also very simple to use. You just raise your hand and unleash it. The more force you pour into it, the more powerful it becomes. It's no wonder that even at the level of Darth Sidious, he constantly used it. This is the reason. Darth Malthael was doing the same at this moment. He continuously used lightning to restrain the movements of the Spirit of Vengeance. Simultaneously, under the influence of his force, all movable objects around him were hurled like cannonballs, their power immense. The force of death was pervasive, sucking the vitality of the vengeful soul and all surrounding creatures at all times. However, Darth Malthael understood that the soul of vengeance was originally an undead creature, devoid of any vitality to absorb. And what about absorbing souls? The Spirit of Vengeance was now a fusion of the souls of 2 powerful Sith Lords, Darth Tenebris and Darth Venomous. Such a soul was powerful, evil, and dark, and even Darth Malthael, who controlled death, dared not touch it rashly. The lightsaber in the hand of the Spirit of Vengeance fell with a crazed intensity. He used the 7th sword technique of the dark side, Juyo. His frenzied state mirrored that of Juyo's. even crazier than most other Sith Lords. The surrounding black mist continuously swept and destroyed, competing with Darth Malthael's death-bearing sandstorm. Darth Malthael's face was extremely solemn at this moment. He could feel the power of the spirit of vengeance. Not only was he powerful, but the twisted dark side force emanating from him corroded everything around him constantly. Malthael was completely unable to sense the thoughts of the vengeful spirit and could not even predict his future. He had been fighting the spirit of vengeance, relying not on the force's predictions, but on his own superb on-the-spot responses. In this situation, if another being like a Jedi were to come over, they might be killed by the spirit of vengeance in just one encounter. In this twisted and evil soul, there was only revenge and killing. Maybe killing was not enough. He even wanted to take all the living things in the world into his hands, torture them arbitrarily, and then slowly kill them in the most brutal way. This is how terrifying the spirit of vengeance was. Needless to say, Darth Tenebris single-handedly trained Darth Plagueis, a disciple who could be ranked among the best Sith Lords in history. He also discovered the power of the Rough Primarch, providing important methods for essence transfer and immortality. Although Darth Venamis did not appear much in the original plot, it must be noted that he was chosen by Darth Tenebris, arguably the best master in the galaxy, to replace Darth Plagueis. Despite his limited appearances, his power was also terrifying. Coupled with 20 years of torture between life and death, Darth Venamis had been twisted to the extreme at the soul level. Combined with the refining of Darth Malthael's alchemy, he had become a being so evil that it was unspeakable. The souls of these two extraordinary Sith Lords merged, and the monster that was born was so twisted and powerful. Darth Malthael believed that even if Darth Sidious were here, he would struggle against this abomination. The situation was dire. Bloody lightning crackled at Darth Malthael's fingertips, but he hesitated to release it. He sensed that a hasty attack might be futile. Instead, he unleashed his force power, tearing a massive chunk of the floor and hurling it with tremendous force. The impact was so intense that it created a sonic boom. The spirit of vengeance was thrown back by the blow, and the heavy metal floor, weighing at least a ton, crashed down on him. However, his body transformed into a black mist and reappeared on the other side. Despite the severe injury, his expression remained twisted and ferocious, as if the fatal wound was inconsequential. In that fleeting moment, all light around him vanished, leaving only boundless darkness and a bloody flash at its center. Darth Malthael had been waiting for this precise moment. With a resounding crack, the darkness disappeared, and the bloody lightning pierced the heart of the vengeful soul. This was a full-force attack, one that Darth Malthael rarely used, even in his battle against Jedi Master Plo Koon on Rendili. The attack was devastating. The powerful dark side force of the vengeful spirit couldn't withstand the bloody lightning. A hole tore through his heart, and his body began to disintegrate, turning to dust within seconds, becoming part of the sandstorm conjured by Darth Malthael. But it wasn't over. Darth Malthael's expression grew grim as the spirit of vengeance persisted. The true essence of the spirit, a soul merging two Sith Lords, remained intact. The black mist thickened and deepened, forming a twisted, human-like shadow. This shadow constantly shifted, as if two beings were melded together. The shadow raised its head and let out a soul-piercing scream. Darth Malthael clutched his temples, retreating in pain. The scream was powerful enough to harm his soul. The monster he had created, now fused with Darth Tenebris, had become terrifyingly formidable. Meanwhile, at the spaceport, a Golden Rich-class private frigate took off and flew swiftly towards the tower. Adele Ulan sat in the cockpit, assisted by a navigation robot she had transferred from a Gozanti-class armed merchant ship. The robot now occupied the co-pilot's seat, aiding her in controlling the frigate. Next to the sofa where Tang Xiao sat, there was a metal sword hilt, crafted from numerous evil and twisted materials. The hilt was 1.2 meters long, and even without a plasma blade, it was a formidable weapon. To avoid drawing attention, Tang Xiao had left the sword on the spaceship when he went to the bar, not anticipating that he would be drawn into the battle. Normally, Tang Xiao wouldn't fear being involved in a fight. As mentioned before, starting from Darth Tenebris, the Sith Lords, Darth Plagueis, Darth Sidious, and Darth Malthael were all masters of both magic and martial arts. Their powerful force skills allowed them to exert immense combat effectiveness. The gauntlet had activated a protective barrier, cushioning the impact and shielding her from harm. The realization brought a wave of relief over Adele Ulan, but it was short-lived as she remembered the dire situation she was still in. She quickly unbuckled herself from the seat and surveyed the wreckage around her. The Golden Regal was in shambles, and the surrounding area was littered with debris. Smoke billowed from the remains of the engine, and the acrid smell of burning metal filled the air. Adele knew she had to move quickly. The other ships that had been following her descent would be arriving soon, and she couldn't afford to be caught. With a determined look, she activated the gauntlet's communication system, hoping to reach Darth Malthael. "Malthael, can you hear me? The ship is down, but I'm safe. I need your help," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. There was a moment of static before Malthael's voice came through, calm and reassuring. "Adele, I'm on my way. Stay hidden and keep the gauntlet active. I'll be there soon." Adele nodded to herself, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. She quickly gathered what supplies she could from the wreckage and made her way to a nearby cluster of rocks, using them as cover. She activated the Gauntlet's cloaking feature, rendering herself invisible to any prying eyes. As she waited, her mind raced with thoughts of the events that had led her here. She remembered the transformation she had undergone under Malthael's guidance, from a sheltered daughter of a wealthy family to a powerful and confident Grand Duchess. She had come so far, and she wasn't about to let it all end here. Minutes felt like hours as she remained hidden, her senses on high alert. Finally, she heard the faint hum of an approaching ship. Peeking out from her hiding spot, she saw Malthael's sleek black vessel descending towards the crash site. Relief washed over her as the ship landed and the ramp lowered, revealing Malthael himself. He strode towards her with purpose, his presence commanding and reassuring. "Adele, let's get out of here," he said, extending a hand to her. She took his hand and followed him onto the ship, feeling a sense of safety and determination. As the ramp closed behind them and the ship lifted off, she knew that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Malthael guided the ship away from the crash site, his focus unwavering. "We'll need to regroup and come up with a new plan," he said, glancing at Adele. "But for now, you're safe, and that's what matters." Adele nodded, her resolve strengthening. "Thank you, Malthael. I won't let you down." He gave her a small, reassuring smile. "I know you won't, Adele. We're in this together." As the ship soared through the sky, leaving the wreckage and danger behind, Adele felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was ready to face whatever came next, with Malthael by her side. The gauntlet independently generated a spherical force barrier to protect itself. The moment it landed, the powerful impact and kinetic energy of the spacecraft were all blocked by the force barrier, which then began to squeeze around the spherical space, causing it to become distorted. Adele Ulan was frightened for a moment. She cautiously stepped out, trying to find a fire extinguisher to put out the burning flames so she could exit more easily. Just then, she heard the sound of another spaceship landing nearby. "Go and take a look. This spaceship is so flashy, it must belong to someone rich. Ha! There must be a lot of valuable things on board." A burst of noisy voices echoed from outside. Adele Ulan suddenly became nervous. It was those spaceships that had been targeting her earlier. No one who lives in Nashada is a kind person. It was easy to guess what kind of people were disembarking from those ships. She touched her waist, where she held a blaster pistol. At that moment, there was a loud bang, and a tall man wearing a mechanized exoskeleton opened the twisted hatch of the spacecraft, catching a glimpse of Adele Ulan. The sturdy man was stunned for a moment, then subconsciously blurted out, "Huh? Is there anyone here who hasn't been thrown to death?" However, when he saw Adele Ulan's unscathed face, which radiated peerless elegance, a lustful expression suddenly appeared on his face. Hey! Hey, hey! Come on, everyone. There's a super beautiful woman here. Hey, hey, hey! Chapter 1820. Adele is innocent. Adele Ulan, a pampered young lady, had never encountered such a terrifying scene before. Seeing the mercenary's lustful look, she screamed in horror. Her beautiful voice, however, only seemed to excite the mercenary wearing a mechanized exoskeleton at the door even more. Ignoring the chaos behind him, he stamped out the flames on the ground and walked in. "You, don't come any closer." Adele quickly pulled out a blaster pistol and pointed it at the man, but her hands were shaking uncontrollably in extreme panic. It was impossible for her to aim properly in such a state. "Don't be afraid, beauty. My brother is here to comfort you." "Ha!" the mercenary said with a lewd smile as he approached. Boom! Adele suddenly pulled the trigger, but the blaster beam hit the twisted bulkhead on the other side, leaving a scorch mark. "This thing is very dangerous. Give me the gun, otherwise I'll show you how powerful I am," the mercenary shouted angrily, his face fierce. Adele was so frightened that she burst into tears. She shook her head desperately, but never dropped the pistol. Don't come any closer. Help! Give me!" Before the mercenary could finish his sentence, Adele shot again. This time, the distance was too close, and the beam hit the mechanized exoskeleton directly, causing smoke to burst from his chest. Furious, he rushed towards Adele Ulan. Driven by the mechanized exoskeleton, the sturdy man, who was over 1.9 meters tall, looked like a humanoid tank. He aimed to slap her across the face, intending to knock out the delicate woman in front of him. However, boom, with a muffled sound, the mercenary was knocked away by an invisible force. Despite the power of the mechanized exoskeleton, it had no ability to resist. The mercenary didn't realize what had happened. He fell to the ground, dizzy. After a few seconds, he finally came to his senses and was about to get up when he found that the delicate beauty had already walked up to him with a blaster pistol in both hands, the black muzzle pointed at his head. Although her hands were still shaking violently, it was impossible to miss at a distance of less than 1 meter. "Put down the gun, you woman," the mercenary yelled, trying to scare her away. "I want to." But Adele Ulan was already desperate. She closed her eyes and pulled the trigger frantically. Bang, 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 bang! Explosive beams continuously fired at the mercenary's head. His threatening words ended abruptly before he could finish speaking. After dozens of shots, Adele finally opened her eyes. She was shocked to see that the mercenary's head and entire upper body had been blown away by the blaster beam. A strong wave of nausea overcame her, and she vomited. Then, without thinking, she ran towards the outside of the wreckage of the spacecraft, not realizing that she ran directly through the blazing flames without any injuries. When she finally emerged from the burning wreckage, the cold air outside hit her cheeks, making her sober. She realized in despair that there were nearly 20 people outside. 3 spaceships were parked around them. These people were scavengers who had followed the crash, hoping to find some loot. Seeing a bright and charming beauty suddenly running out, they were stunned for a moment, then rushed towards her, shouting loudly. As for the blaster pistol in her hand, no one took it seriously. Boom! Adele Ulan pulled the trigger directly at a Rhodian who was rushing forward. She hit the man squarely in the chest. The people around him were shocked, but they were all extremely vicious individuals and didn't take it to heart. They immediately took out their firearms, large and small, and one even took out a rocket launcher. "Put down the gun, you bitch!" a mercenary shouted, his voice echoing through the chaos. Seeing dozens of guns pointed at her, Adele Ulan was extremely frightened. She instinctively raised her hands, but then she thought of the terrible fate that awaited her if she fell into the hands of these people. She immediately lowered them. "I am the wife of Grand Duke Liming. Even if it means death, I cannot accept such an insult." Her heart screamed in defiance. "Asshole, this stinky bitch killed Roden." Another mercenary, clearly a comrade of Roden, was enraged. He raised his blaster rifle and fired a shot. However, something surprising happened. The precise shot bounced off an invisible barrier, 1 meter in front of Adele Ulan's body. The mercenary was stunned for a moment, then fired again. But the shot was still deflected. Only then did the group realize what was happening and yelled, "She is equipped with a personal shield. Kill her." Seeing the mercenaries rushing towards her, Adele Ulan quickly turned and ran back towards the wreckage of the spacecraft. The gangsters and mercenaries behind her gave chase, shooting wildly, but dozens of explosive beams were all blocked without exception. She turned around suddenly, only to see a mercenary with a rocket launcher pulling the trigger. A rocket was fired directly at her head. Boom! The rocket exploded instantly. Adele Ulan was hit by the shockwave and staggered back several steps. She screamed and fell to the ground. The deadly shockwave from the rocket explosion seemed to just push her. Even though Adele Ulan was not a fighter, she realized something was wrong. She looked around and found herself surrounded by flames. However, the flames were blocked by an invisible force. Her surroundings were burning, but she remained unharmed. She raised her left hand, and on the gauntlet that she had once thought ugly, several golden gems were emitting a faint light. "Are you protecting me, Master?" Adele Ulan murmured to herself, her eyes immediately becoming resolute. She stood up abruptly, gripping the blaster pistol tightly in her hand. Seeing that she had been hit by a rocket and stood up without any injuries, the mercenaries realized something was seriously wrong. Someone shouted, "The shield on her body is high-end. Kill her. Even if we just get this shield device, we'll make a fortune." "Go!" several others shouted while continuing to shoot. The blaster beams were all deflected and were of no use at all. "Rush and grab her. This kind of shield will not be triggered unless it is fast and powerful." A Trandoshan shouted, "Come out, you bitch!" Another mercenary had already rushed over from the other side. He raised his hand to grab Adele Ulan's right hand, holding the gun. In the next second, he was knocked away by an invisible force. Chapter 821, The Killing Princess. "Idiot! I told you not to be so fast!" The Trandoshan mercenary cursed as he watched his comrade trigger the shield's threshold. He ran past in an irregular route, knowing that expensive one-way shields like this used advanced magnetic field technology. These shields only responded to attacks from the outside, allowing movements and attacks from the inside to pass through unimpeded. This sophisticated technology was produced by only a few companies in the entire galaxy, making these shields very expensive. To facilitate movement, one-way shields often set a threshold aimed at speed and energy level. If an object approached at a slower speed and lower energy level, the shield would not activate. This prevented the shield from bouncing away floor tiles, small stones, and other minor objects, which would otherwise consume a lot of energy. Experienced mercenaries knew that to fight an opponent with such a shield, they needed to approach slowly and launch an attack without activating the shield. Despite knowing this, fighting an opponent with a one-way shield was nearly impossible. If their opponent wasn't such a cute little beauty, these mercenaries would have fled long ago. But now, they felt they had a good chance. Adele Ulan, understanding the protective ability of her gauntlet, finally mustered the courage to rush out, pick up a blaster pistol, and shoot. However, her accuracy was terrible, and she missed every shot. Meanwhile, the Trandoshan mercenary had already circled to her side and behind. As he got close to Adele, he slowed his movements and, with a grin, slowly stretched out his hand to grab her. Adele didn't notice him at all. Her attention was focused on a mercenary hiding behind a rock in front of her. She kept shooting, just wanting to kill one person first. For someone like her, who didn't know how to fight, the most common mistake was to focus on one place and ignore other directions. The Trandoshan was very close, with a ferocious and proud expression on his face. As long as he grabbed the woman's delicate neck and squeezed, she would immediately lose her ability to resist. Then, this advanced and expensive personal shield device would belong to him. He could foresee that with this device, he would be invincible in the mercenary world, and no task would be difficult for him. Jango Fett, Cade Bane, these legendary mercenaries would be nothing compared to him. However, before he could finish this sweet dream, he suddenly felt an enormous force hit him. It was completely unstoppable, and he was knocked away. What happened to her shield? The other mercenaries who witnessed the whole process were shocked. They couldn't understand how this shield worked at all. They didn't know that Little Klesh's gauntlet didn't rely on speed or energy to judge. It judged based on whether the opponent was hostile. This difference in the triggering mechanism was the difference between mass-produced industrial products and artifacts. "Kill her! Kill her!" Finally, a mercenary, not wanting to think anymore, roared loudly and fired again. But the result was the same. The dense blast beams couldn't shake Little Klesh's gauntlet at all, and all the shots were ineffective. At the same time, Adele Ulan completely gave up on long-distance shooting. She took the initiative to rush over with her small pistol. The mercenary hiding behind the rock didn't expect this. He was dumbfounded as Adele rushed in front of him, put the blaster pistol to his face, and shot. Boom! The mercenary's head exploded like a watermelon. Countless droplets of blood mixed with brain matter splattered across Adele's face. Yet her heart was numb. She continued to chase the other mercenary with a pistol in hand. The scene had taken on a bizarre twist. A beautiful girl, covered in blood and wearing a dress that was more suited for a ball than a battlefield, was chasing a group of heavily armed mercenaries. Some of them even wore mechanized exoskeletons, but they were running from her in sheer panic. The mercenaries roared and fired sporadically, but their efforts were futile. After stumbling twice, Adele Ulan kicked off her high heels and continued the pursuit barefoot. She fired her pistol wildly, and finally, her aim was true. A mercenary fell to the ground in front of her. She approached him, looking down with cold determination, and raised her pistol. "No, don't. Please spare me. Please." The mercenary pleaded desperately. Adele did not hesitate. She pulled the trigger. After dispatching several more mercenaries, the remaining ones abandoned their resistance and fled towards their spaceship. They had realized they were no match for this relentless woman. More accurately, it was her personal shield that was proving to be their undoing. Even when a mercenary had tried to trip her earlier, her shield had protected her, and his leg had broken instead. The mercenaries were in disbelief. Was this even fair? Was there no justice? One of the faster mercenaries reached his spaceship, and instead of heading to the cockpit, he went straight to the turret. He aimed a shipborne turbolaser gun at Adele and fired. Boom! Even though it was a light turbolaser cannon, it was still designed for space combat. Its power was immense. The explosion was so violent that it killed several other mercenaries nearby. However, as the smoke cleared, the mercenaries were horrified to see Adele standing unharmed. She had merely fallen and was now getting back up. "Monster!" they screamed, their will to fight completely shattered. One of the spaceships took off, desperate to escape from this terrifying woman. But then, a black swordlight flashed, enveloping the entire area in darkness. When the light returned, the mercenaries saw the spaceship exploding and falling from the sky. Standing on the wreckage was a figure, descending with the debris, a man in a black cloak, wielding a weapon that looked like a black spear. "Master!" Adele Ulan cried out in surprise, tears streaming down her face. Boom! The spacecraft crashed to the ground in a violent explosion. Another spaceship tried to take off, but despite its engines roaring at full power, it couldn't lift off. Darth Malthael extended a hand, and with the sheer force of his power, he held the spaceship in place, preventing its escape. Chapter 1822. The End of Nashada. "Master!" Adele Ulan cried out, disregarding everything else as she ran towards Darth Malthael. Her eyes were fixed solely on him, the man with whom she had a twisted relationship. Though they were called husband and wife, she referred to him as Master, Tang Xiao. Her husband gave her an unparalleled sense of security, and in her fervor, she even discarded her blaster pistol, not wanting to touch it anymore. However, her enthusiasm was met with cold indifference. Darth Malthael raised his hand, and the spaceship attempting to escape was forcibly smashed to the ground with a deafening crash, sending clouds of dust billowing into the air. Adele Ulan was momentarily stunned by the sight of the dust rushing towards her. Despite his silence, she could feel her husband's resistance. She stopped in her tracks, looking at Darth Malthael with a blank expression. "Master, you haven't finished your work yet. Now you want to celebrate." Darth Malthael's tone was mocking. You haven't dealt with these people yet. I helped you with 4 of them, and now there are 7 more on that spaceship," he said coldly. "They wanted to rob you, humiliate your body, and even harm your life, and now you plan to leave them behind and come over to give me a hug? Master, this shouldn't be." Adele Ulan tried to explain, but Darth Malthael cut her off, his voice icy. "Do it." With that, he raised his hand, and an immense sandstorm materialized out of thin air, encircling the area and preventing anyone from entering or leaving. The remaining 7 mercenaries, panicked, opened the door of the damaged spaceship and ran out. They saw Darth Malthael and were filled with terror. Two of them even fell to the ground, screaming, "No, don't kill me! Don't kill me!" One of them begged for mercy. Darth Malthael ignored them. He sheathed his soul-stealing sword, slung it behind his back, and walked over to sit on a fragment of the spacecraft, crossing his legs as if the situation had nothing to do with him. Adele Ulan felt a wave of desperation and loss. She looked at her husband and then at the 7 mercenaries. Gritting her teeth, she bent down, picked up the blaster pistol from the ground, and shakily took aim. "Don't kill me. Please, we just wanted to pick up some garbage," the mercenaries pleaded. Despite her lack of a menacing appearance, they had witnessed the impenetrable shield earlier and knew better than to underestimate her. Adele Ulan, now risking her life, raised her pistol and fired a shot. The shot missed, but it alerted the mercenaries, who turned and ran. No matter how they ran, they couldn't escape the sandstorm's confines. Adele Ulan caught up with them, managing to kill 2 with her pistol. The remaining mercenaries, seeing no other option, turned and charged at her, determined to fight to the death. One even attempted to attack Darth Malthael, perhaps believing that without his shield he could be killed. But as soon as he got close, his body was twisted into a grotesque shape by a powerful force, his blood spraying everywhere and shattering the will of the remaining mercenaries. The ensuing chase was slow and torturous. Adele's lack of marksmanship made the process agonizing, and the mercenaries saw no hope. Eventually, their spirits broke and they stood their ground, firing wildly at Adele Ulan. The blaster beams were effortlessly blocked by Little Klesh's gauntlet, ensuring Adele's safety as she continued her grim task. Adele Ulan methodically eliminated her targets one by one with her blaster pistol. The intensity of the situation nearly drove her to madness. She screamed, releasing her pent-up rage, and then discharged all the explosive gas stored in her blaster pistol, reducing the last person to a puddle of flesh. Suddenly, she snapped back to reality, collapsing to her knees and vomiting. At that moment, the surrounding sandstorm vanished as if it had never existed. Darth Malthael stood up and said calmly, "Let's go." He walked towards the only intact spaceship. The Golden Regal had crashed, and 3 other ships had followed. One had been severed by his lightsaber, another had been pulled down by his force powers, leaving only the G9 cargo ship intact. It would suffice for their needs. Adele Ulan, still recovering, quickly wiped her mouth and hurried after Darth Malthael. On board the spacecraft, Darth Malthael was already seated in the cockpit, starting the engine. Adele approached him, gently stroking his back and then massaging his shoulders with just the right amount of pressure. "Master, what just happened?" she asked hesitantly. A strange smile played on Darth Malthael's lips. "Ah, it's very interesting," he replied cryptically. "Interesting," Adele Ulan echoed, clearly puzzled. "You don't understand, and you don't need to," Darth Malthael said. "Contact Darth Lilim and inform her that there's no need to go to the Delay 2 satellite for research. The super darkness created by Geth Banshee should be left to the priestesses to study. The situation on Mandalore is about to change, so she should get there as soon as possible." "Understood," Adele Ulan responded promptly. Darth Malthael leaned back in his chair, piloting the spacecraft while contemplating recent events. Darth Tenebris was dead, his soul utterly destroyed. Darth Venomous, though dangerous, had been dealt with once the soul-stealing sword was reclaimed. His death force naturally countered these ghosts. But Darth Tenebris had mentioned leaving everything to his heir. What did he mean by that? Who was this heir? What plans had he left behind? Darth Malthael had no answers. Tenebris was known for his meticulous planning, and he would not have died without leaving a significant contingency. Darth Malthael's eyes grew cold and calculating. Tenebris had taught him much, helped him kill Darth Plagueis, and contributed to his research on immortality. But the subsequent backlash had been severe. Perhaps this was the price of trying to exploit a Sith Lord. And then there was the Force. Lately, Darth Malthael had experienced a string of minor misfortunes, enough to make him uneasy. Was the Chosen One truly about to appear? Luke Skywalker. Chapter 1823, Census, Part 1, Principality of Dawn, Model Sector, Planet Anaji, Temporary City Number 2. Carl Kestis picked up a connecting piece of a modular housing unit and threw it accurately into the hands of Furman, who was standing on the second floor. Furman installed the piece securely and pushed it hard to confirm that the wall was firmly in place. "It's ready here," Furman shouted, then picked up a heavy installation tool with one hand and jumped down. "Next is the roof. Mooney has already brought JG-091 over there." Carl Kestis patted the dust off his body and looked at the two-story house in front of him with satisfaction. "Done. I can get the reward again today. How about I treat you to a couple of drinks?" Furman laughed heartily. "Ha ha ha! No problem. Let's have a few more beers. I'm in love with this specialty of the Dawn Principality." At that moment, two other workers from their group approached with a construction robot labeled JG-091. The robot was holding a modular roof in its hands. However, despite the robot's strength, the roof, which was over 5 meters square, made the robot's center of gravity unstable. The two workers were nearby to help balance it. This was the reality of working in the temporary city. Apart from some robots, there was very little advanced construction machinery. The officials of the Principality of Dawn were essentially creating work for them, which could be seen as a method of providing relief through employment. "Be careful. Don't let the roof fall," Carl Kestis shouted, and he and Furman ran over to help. Suddenly, a mishap occurred. The roof module lifted by the robot tilted and hit a nearby light pole. It slipped from the robot's grasp and fell. Mooney, one of the workers, was about to be hit by the heavy roof module. Carl Kestis's heart tightened. He instinctively shook his hand, but then let it go. He ran over and tried his best to push the roof module to the other side. Bang! The heavy roof module crashed to the ground. Mooney was struck hard and fell unconscious. Carl Kestis was also brought down by the module. A large piece of flesh was scratched from his chest and arms. Blood seeped out, staining his clothes red. He grimaced in pain. "Are you okay, Carl?" Furman shouted. "Call the doctor." Soon, several medical robots floated over and placed Mooney on an anti-gravity stretcher, taking him to the hospital. Another medical robot floated over to Carl Kestis and said, "Sir, let me take you to the hospital for examination." "No, I'm not going to the hospital." Carl Kestis suddenly raised his voice. "It's just a scratch." According to the preliminary scan, your abrasion area totals 37.7 square centimeters, which is a serious trauma and needs to be treated as soon as possible, the medical robot insisted. "I said no need," Carl Kestis shouted. "I have my own first aid spray. No need to go to the hospital." According to Article 67 of the Doctor-Patient Regulations, when the injury is not fatal, the patient's opinion shall prevail. Please pay attention to your health. With that, the medical robot turned around and floated away. Furman came over, concerned. "You really don't need to go to the hospital? You have a work-related injury, so you don't get medical expenses. That means you don't get paid for the few days you go to the hospital." "I don't need it," Carl Kestis said anxiously. "I bought a bottle of first aid spray at home. Just spray it and it'll be fine." Furman frowned. "You actually went and exchanged for such a luxury item? You must know that this is a product of Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group, and exchanging one bottle is equivalent to 1 week's salary. No wonder you rarely went out." "Last month we went out for drinks. What happened today was an accident. How dangerous can it be for us to do manual work on the top 2 floors? Do we really need first aid spray?" Although the hospital provides free treatment for work-related injuries, the Principality of Dawn doesn't offer first aid spray to temporary immigrants like us. When you go to the hospital now, it's mostly just basic disinfection, hemostasis, and bandaging. Carl Kestis hesitated, then said casually, "I don't like hospitals. Because of the incident, today's bonus was lost, and everyone left unhappy." Carl Kestis returned to his residence, took off his blood-stained clothes, and took a shower to wash away the dust from his body. He then disinfected the large bruised area and sprayed first aid spray. As one of the flagship products of Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group, first aid spray has become a popular personal first aid product in the galaxy due to its low price and easy portability. Compared to Bacta liquid, which is very effective but expensive and not easily portable, first aid spray can only perform basic first aid treatment. However, it has been proven that it can save lives in critical moments. Carl's bleeding wound stopped immediately, and he felt an itching sensation, indicating that the wound had begun to heal. He breathed a sigh of relief and found a bandage to cover it. Since he was bandaging it himself, it was wrapped crookedly and barely covered the wound. He then washed his bloody clothes repeatedly under running water until only a faint trace of blood remained. After confirming that nothing more could be extracted from them, he threw the damaged clothes into the garbage can. It has been 2 months since he arrived in this temporary city, and Carl Kestis feels he is almost used to life here. Although manual labor in the morning and technical study in the afternoon is boring and hard, it is exactly what he wants. The Jedi Order has been destroyed, the Galactic Republic has been reorganized into the Galactic Empire, and the Emperor is the Sith Lord Darth Sidious. However, the Principality of Dawn, where he is now, is also the territory of another Sith Lord, the Dead Angel. Additionally, the media of the Galactic Republic Empire have long smeared Count Dooku of the Confederation of Independent Systems, calling him an evil and despicable Dark Lord. It seems the entire galaxy has become the back garden of the Sith Lords. How could such a situation not make the surviving Jedi feel desperate? So Carl decided to find a place to spend the rest of his life. Here in the Dawn Principality, a life of self-reliance might be surprisingly good. The next day, after finishing his work in the morning, Carl Kestis took advantage of his lunch break to go to the hospital with Furman and visited Mooney, who was no longer in danger but not yet awake. On the way back, Furman suddenly said, "Did you hear? The census is about to begin." Census? Carl Kestis was startled. Aren't there a large number of immigrants coming here every day? It is said that hundreds of millions of immigrants have arrived in the past 2 months. With such chaos, how are they going to conduct a census? Furman waved his hand dismissively. Of course, those officials have their own ideas. Haven't you noticed? The Dawn Principality doesn't mind using robots on a large scale, which is different from the Galactic Republic. Coupled with their centralized power, they can always pull off some miracles. Chapter 1824, Census, Part 2. Carl Kestis glanced at Furman and asked, "You seem very excited. This census is just a statistic. It has nothing to do with us, right?" "Why doesn't it matter? After the census is completed, we are basically scheduled to be official immigrants. Next, as long as we continue to complete our work, a spaceship will soon pick us up and take us to the official workplace," Furman explained. Carl scratched his head and asked, "How do you know so much about this?" Furman patted Carl on the shoulder and said, "Go out and walk more if you have nothing to do, and talk to friends around you. Of course, you don't know if you stay at home all day long. I learned this from a friend who is a guard. Even though they usually look serious and well-armed, they are just like us after work, drinking, smoking, and watching the beauties passing by." Carl lowered his head and fell silent. After a moment, he raised his head and asked, "So the census is just about registering your name, and that's all?" He seemed to cling to a last glimmer of hope. Furman thought for a while and replied, "It's quite detailed. There will be a basic physical health scan, and then some blood samples will be taken and filed." Carl's heart beat violently. He lowered his head to hide his strong uneasiness, and then said, "I'll go back to the dormitory first. I'm feeling a little uncomfortable." "Hey, didn't you agree to buy me a beer?" Furman called after him. Tomorrow," Carl said as he quickened his pace and fled back to his dormitory. Back in the dormitory, Carl felt extremely panicked. Furman didn't feel anything, but Carl knew very well what the blood test meant. They would check the density of midichlorians in his body. In other words, they would check to see if he was force-sensitive. Carl Kestis was not naive enough to think that, in a country ruled by the Sith Lord Death Angel, drawing blood would be for something as benign as checking blood sugar and liver function. He would be exposed. There was no doubt about it. Carl knew that his midichlorian density was between 9,000 and 10,000, which was the highest among his batch of Jedi apprentices at the time. In other words, as long as they'd a little inspection, this fact would be exposed immediately. And God knows how the Death Angels dealt with force-sensitive people in their territory. Carl knew that if he were in the Galactic Empire, once discovered, he would be captured immediately. Carl couldn't help but squat down, trying to pull out a box hidden under the bed. But after thinking about it for a while, he gave up and lay back on the bed, slumped. Hello, Mr. Carl. Do you want to start today's class? The AI in the room projected an image of a beautiful woman, reminding him that he should study. Take leave today, Carl said. Okay, this is your first day off this month. Currently, you have 1 day left of your 2-day holiday. Please have a good rest, the AI responded before the holographic projection disappeared. The next day, Carl Kestis approached Furman at work and asked in a low voice, "Can you help me find out when the census will be?" Furman was a little surprised. "Why are you so worried about the census? Relax, it's just a census." "Please, this is very important to me," Carl said. "I have some heart problems, and I'm worried that they will drive me away because of this." Furman then became serious and said, "Why didn't you tell me earlier? Don't worry, I will ask for you. And, since you have a heart problem, you should work less." "This little bit of work doesn't matter," Carl replied. At the end of the day, Furman went to inquire about the census, and Carl went to the hospital to visit Mooney again. Mooney had suffered a fractured tibia, a very serious injury that would require at least 2 months of recuperation. Of course, it was said that if you were willing to pay a high price, people from Umbrella Corporation could expedite the healing process. The pharmaceutical group is willing to help you recover from your injury in a week. However, since they chose to immigrate, Mooney naturally lacks the financial resources. He is now working hard to learn technical knowledge and is striving to complete the mechanical engineer exam while still in the hospital. This way, he hopes to find a job. If the company that originally planned to hire him withdraws its invitation after he is discharged and he cannot find a job, he may be forced to face deportation. In the Principality of Dawn, which is currently suffering from a population explosion, he has no chance of begging for food. Carl Kestis chatted with Mooney, then went to the nurse's station and pretended that Mooney's blood sample was contaminated. He tricked the nurse into drawing blood again and stole a tube of the sample, hiding it. Such a small action is trivial for a Jedi Knight. 3 more days passed, and sure enough, a huge ring-Rukriha-class battleship landed on the planet Anaji. When this ring-shaped giant ship, with a diameter of more than 3,100 meters, appeared in the atmosphere, Carl Kestis felt a sense of illusion. In the past, when this iconic battleship of the Separatists appeared in the planet's atmosphere, he and his master would have already drawn their lightsabers and rushed forward to meet the enemy. But now, he had to get used to the fact that the Rookery Hook-class battleship was his ally. Well, at least for now. The spherical core spacecraft in the center of the Rookery Hook-class battleship detached from the hull and landed. At the same time, a large number of APOD 33 transport aircraft flew down from the hangar on the ring-shaped hull, numbering in the hundreds. The transport planes fanned out, landed in each neighborhood, and began setting up census points. Soon, the official notice of the census was issued, requiring every immigrant in the temporary city to go to the local census point for inspection and report within the same day. After completing the inspection, a pass would be issued, and within the next 2 months, only the pass holder could live in the city. Carl Kestis went out in the morning, but as soon as he walked out, the door behind him suddenly locked automatically. The indicator light turned red, and when he tried to open it, he was prompted that he needed a pass. Carl was very anxious because his lightsaber was still in the room. He had no choice but to bite the bullet and go conduct the census. Without his lightsaber, facing this crisis-ridden galaxy, his options were very limited, and he might even die in the crossfire of gangs somewhere. He found Furman, and the two walked toward the cafeteria together. However, people returning from the front told them that the canteen was also closed, and you needed a pass to eat there. It seems that they considered this when they built the city. A second identification system has been installed on our door locks and the registration system in the canteen. I just called my son and asked him about the situation there. The registration has been completed in advance, and now their life is as usual. Furman patted Carl on the shoulder and said, "Forget it. I guess I will be hungry this morning. Come on, let's go further and find a census point with fewer people." Carl Kestis forced a smile and said, "Forget it. I don't have the energy to walk too far without breakfast. Let's stay close." If it's nearby, I guess we can't even have lunch, Furman muttered, but still went to line up with Carl. Carl touched the blood sample in his hand without leaving a trace, observed the surrounding environment, and planned how to replace his blood sample later without anyone noticing. He saw 4 army soldiers wearing black combat uniforms outside the census point and more than 20 B-1 combat robots maintaining order. Behind the officials in charge of the census, 2 B-2 super combat robots stood quietly, their right arms retracted on their sides. The twin blaster machine guns displayed a formidable and lethal force. Carl Kestis continued to observe the census process, noting its simplicity. Residents would walk over and stand in front of an official. The staff would scan them up and down with a scanner, ask for their name, and compare it with the information on the ticket for boarding the immigration ship in the database. After confirming there were no issues, they would prick the person's finger with a small device about 2 centimeters long, extracting around 3 milliliters of blood. The registration would then be complete. The staff would issue a pass card to the resident, who could then leave. The blood samples were sorted and placed in a refrigerator, presumably for centralized examination later. Carl had seen equipment for checking midichlorians before. It was very expensive and required a central computer for detection, making it impossible to distribute to every registration point. He thought there might still be a chance. Carl noticed a human woman queuing in front of him. He muttered an apology to himself and gently waved his hand. The woman immediately felt a hard slap on her buttocks and became furious. She turned around and accused the innocent grand man behind her, and the two soon started arguing. Taking advantage of the distraction, Carl raised his hand again, and a blood collection device from the box in front of him floated up and moved slowly in his direction. However, the quarrel ended quickly. "Pull them apart," the official waved his hand impatiently. "Roger, Roger!" The 2 B-1 combat robots immediately walked up, lifted the arguing individuals, and threw them out of the queue. The quarrel ended immediately. The officials and the nurse in charge of blood collection were about to return their attention to their work, but Carl had not yet managed to get the blood collection device using the Force. Carl broke into a cold sweat. He had left the Jedi Order too early and never completed his training. Controlling the Force to accurately take a small blood collection device from several meters away was beyond his current abilities. The more anxious he became, the weaker his control over the Force grew. The nurse taking blood suddenly noticed the floating blood collection device. She didn't react at first, but then frowned and turned around to take another look. At this critical moment, a hand suddenly reached out and grabbed the blood collection device. The nurse glanced around the room but didn't see anything unusual. She thought she had imagined it and continued working. The census process was cumbersome, mainly because there were so many people to check and create files for. The staff was under high pressure, and their work was naturally not very detailed. For Carl, it felt like the end of the world. Furman had caught the blood collection device floating in midair. Furman looked back at Carl, frowning in confusion, but quietly handed the device to him. Carl was extremely nervous, with cold sweat on his forehead and his whole body trembling. His hand, soaked with sweat, took the blood collection device. He was momentarily confused and didn't know what to do. Furman looked back at him and said, "Don't be nervous. These robots are nothing to be afraid of. Look." It was Furman's turn to register. He deliberately delayed, knocking on the B-1 combat robot next to him and exaggeratedly saying, "Wow, I've never touched a robot like this." "Please complete the registration," the B-1 combat robot said in a monotone. "Sir, could you please come over?" the staff member urged. "There are many people behind you." "Hey, you ugly monster, stay away from me. I just touched this robot. Now I want a beautiful girl to come and do the registration." "Please complete the registration," the B-1 combat robot instructed, raising its hand to apprehend him. Furman, tall and as strong as an ox, broke free and shoved the scanner and the box containing the blood samples to the ground with a crash. Realizing the gravity of the situation, especially when he noticed the 2 B-2 super battle robots lowering their blaster machine guns, Furman quickly apologized. I'm sorry. It's my fault. I'll help you clean it up." He swiftly, gathered the fallen scanner and the blood sample he had knocked over. Carl Kestis, understanding that Furman was creating a diversion for him, quickly sucked Mooney's blood sample into the blood collection device. He then walked up impatiently and urged, "Register me quickly. I'm starving." As he spoke, he picked up a blood collection device from the table and drew a sample from himself. "Hey, don't touch that!" the blood collection nurse shouted urgently. But Carl had already swapped the blood samples, discarding the other device. Okay, I've seen it countless times just now. I know how to use this thing. Scan it for me quickly," he insisted. The nurse, after a few warnings, decided to focus on restoring order. She scanned Carl's physical condition and then the blood sample to complete the registration. She then called for the next person. As Carl Kestis walked out, he saw a B-2 super combat robot dragging Furman towards the confinement room. Furman's expression was a mix of resignation and determination, knowing he had successfully bought Carl the time he needed.